about why he took the steps to remove her. We all know what has now become information in the public domain. We know that she is somebody who was being accused of misleading Parliament, but also accused of undermining Parliament. That's on the public record. But what informed the president's decision? Why did he remove her? And why does the president not give us reasons for his decisions? What are the reasons? Why is it that we seem to just be in a situation where the president acts? By all means, of course, it's his prerogative to make some of the decisions he makes. But why is it that the president doesn't seem to think that he owes ordinary members of the public reasons for his decisions? I would like to believe that perhaps behind closed doors, partners of the GNU might know what's happening. Well, we know that the DA had threatened that it was not going to support the budget for higher education and human settlements. That's what the party had said. This, of course, was going to interrupt the adoption of the appropriations bill, which is going to be before Parliament tomorrow. It would have meant that the bill in its entirety would not have been adopted. And that's the bill, of course, that allows, that authorizes or legalizes the dispensation of funds to government departments. So it's a really crucial bill. Now, of course, the DA had said if Ngabane is still in her position, it would not be signing that, it would not be supporting that, the appropriations bill that is. And also, if Thembisi Mohlahlana was in her position, now that Ngabane has gone, it may well clear the path for tomorrow's sitting to go effortlessly. But we still need the president to account to the people of this country. Am I the only one that feels that way? Maybe you have a different view. The president doesn't take questions after his media briefings. In fact, it got to a point where initially when it was happening, there was a lot of pushback from journalists. But after a while, even we became relaxed because it was just the system, right? It's what the president said he was going to do. He committed to having more engagements with the media, even if he wasn't taking questions. That hasn't happened. And now we're literally in a situation where the president does what he wants and the people of this country, well, you guys can, connect the dots yourself. Fill in the missing words for yourself. But the one thing the president is not going to do is fill in those missing dots for us. We have to figure out what is going on in his mind. We have to figure out why he's thinking the way that he's thinking, why he's acting the way that he's acting. Like I asked, am I the only one that feels that way? Are you satisfied with the kind of accountability that you see from the president? And I'm even willing to use it as accountability in inverted commas. That's part of the conversation that we can have today. And one hopes that the whole Ngabane matter is not just swept under the carpet because she's out. We still need to know where that list of names came from. The number to dial 086 000 2032. On the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107.
The Atlas Lionesses want to capitalize on home ground advantage and secure ticket to the final. But the Black Queens want to be remembered for spoiling the party for the host nation. This is the semi-final contest of the Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024. Catch the big clash between the North and the West. Morocco versus Ghana. This Tuesday, 22 July at 8:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC 3 at 9 p.m. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game. I see
are listening to SFM Radio this Mandela Month.
It is in your hands now.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, let me start it off in Durban. Don, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Cathy.
Yes, sir.
Good, always good to hear you on there.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Cathy, yes, first thing, there are two things I just want to mention quickly. First thing, the unaccountability of our president is a legacy of the current politics. The idea that there's something worse if he comes gives him the platform to be as arrogant as he is. He knows the DA won't call for a vote of no confidence because not only are they part of his government, but they are scared of the greater danger. Now, that is why he can do exactly what he wants. And the whole concept of this Ramaphoria has washed clean now. All he can do when things fail is try and pick up the old Mandela era and try and bring it to the fore as if it is still accountable today. That's not going to work. That's the first thing that I wanted to speak about.
Don, do you feel like South Africans are being almost held hostage to this boogeyman? The boogeyman of, well, this is the best outcome for the country. And if it's not this option, well, you don't want to know what's next because it's much worse than anything you can imagine.
That you are 100% right. And there is truth in it, obviously. But all the DA is doing in the GNU is being a rubber stamp for what an unaccountable president is doing. Nothing's changed. He's giving us a disastrous foreign affairs attitude towards the countries we need for our economic growth. It's almost as if, Cathy, and I'm going to say something controversial, it's almost as if he is on purpose breaking down the economy of this country. Surely nobody could be that stupid as to not realize what his policies are doing. It's like he's doing it on purpose. He's not that stupid, I'm sure.
And if he's doing it on purpose, what do you think would be the motivation for that? Let's take the thought to its logical conclusion in your view.
I spoke to an ANC political commissar in 1994. Now, this is way out, okay? I don't know if I can equate it to this. So let me tell you what he told me. He said to me, when I was speaking about the economy of the future, he said something to me that was very interesting. He said, you know what? The economy, I'm talking in 1994 now, he said the economy as it is today, all that black South Africans can do is be workers in it. It's too sophisticated, it's too ethical, and it's too technologically advanced. So what we are going to do, this is now 1994, and according to him was the policy of the time. What we're going to do is break down the economy to a level where we can be the owners, whether it's not ethical, technologically advanced, or sophisticated, doesn't matter. We will be the owners of the economy. And when I said to him, but my friend, the economy needs to at that stage, sustain 40 million people. if you break it down to, for instance, this is the example he gave me, the taxi industry. If somebody is driving a route and somebody with a better idea comes, you shoot him. That was his idea of the taxi industry and the economy that at that stage he was saying we need so that black South Africans can own it. I said, but then you're going to have to, 10 million people will have to die that won't feed enough. He says, so what? It's not going to be me. Now, that's a terrible thing to say, and I don't know if there's a legacy of that. It's almost too crude to think that. But why else? I don't know why it's done purposefully.
Yeah, look, Don, if I have to just assess what you have said, that argument to me is not one that I think is rational, nor is it one that I think makes sense.
100%.
Because 30 years
all I'm
into...
saying is, Cathy, you're right. I agree.
Yeah.
But that's what somebody said to me. I'm digging for reasons, Cathy. Why are we going where we're going?
Yeah, okay. Don?
That's the one thing. Then one more thing.
Very quickly.
Very quickly. Cathy, your role in what you're doing, in your unbiased way of doing things, is absolutely critical for the future of the radio in South Africa. There are some of your colleagues that are very suspect. It is always sad when you're not the one doing it. I wish you could be the HR person in your department. But I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much for that compliment. I appreciate it. And what I wanted to say is that obviously when we look at the state of the economy today and how things sit today, that is the basis on which I say that what that individual was saying was clearly irrational. Buya, you are in Mthatha. Good morning.
Thank you, Cathy, to you and to your listener. Cathy, you are to us as listeners of South Africa. What does it mean to be South Africa? Do you still remember that?
Was it when we were talking about the national dialogue?
No, I'm speaking generally, Cathy.
Okay.
You once asked what does it mean to be South African?
Yes.
I've been listening, Cathy, even on your radio, for a very long time. I don't think we really know in South Africa what it really means to be South African. And I think it's a sad story for us, Cathy. There was a time, Cathy, you were not on studio, net, there was KG. KG played a TEDx talk by a guy. He was talking about politicians not loving poor people. You see, Cathy, you look at the president, you look at all these people, the mandashes of this world. You see, for us as the youth, it's a very sad story, my sister, because these people, you look at Mr. Ramaphosa, and I don't know his age, but he's an elderly person, For them, they've achieved what they always wanted to be while they were still young people. Now they are old people. You look at the way they are running the country, my sister. No decisions. For an example, you look at Mr. Ramaphosa as a person. The guy, for me, kids, I don't have confidence in the guy. Scandals are happening in the country. The president will just set up commissions. Like, we are a leaderless nation, and it's a sad story, man, Katie, for South Africa. It's a sad story. That's all I wanted to say, Katie. Thank you very much.
All right, Buya. Buya out in Mthatha. And perhaps that's really what we need to remember, that whether it's inaction, whether it's lack of accountability, all of these things have consequences for what we as South Africans ultimately experience when we have to interact and engage with government, whether it's through the provision of services, whether it's through policies and decisions that are made that affect our lives every single day, that determine how we run our lives every single day. So yes, it's about ultimately making sure that those decisions that are made are always made in our best interest as the people of this country. And if not, the least we can do is get answers as to why. That's if we're in a true democracy. That's if this is really a true democracy.
Good morning, I'm Kulofelo. Therefore, in the headlines this hour, Judge Irma Skuurman is expected to deliver her judgment in the application by the state for clarification on the acquittal of televangelist Timothy Omotoso and his co-accused. Parliament's Police and Justice and Constitutional Development Committees are meeting this morning to discuss the terms of reference that will outline the work of an ad hoc committee as a means for the institution to look into issues of national security. And further afield, there have been further falls on Asian stock markets in response to the sweeping global import taxes announced by US President Donald Trump. I'll have details at 10.
Lawang Ramalepe right back. What lightens up my mood is music, R&B, sometimes it's Lokombo, sometimes reggae. I was good in athletics. I used to run the 800 meters. Me as a president, hey, what I would change? Unemployment and fixing the economy. To all our fans, you can watch the game on SABC Sport. We are the African champions. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects.
Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Join us for this year's fundraiser, Jazz for Young People concert at the National School of the Arts on the 26th of July. This unique event, perfect for families, is a powerful celebration of youth, creativity and community spirit. So bring the whole family to enjoy a wonderful day of world-class jazz curated by Zoe Mudicha, featuring the Parktown Girls Band, Tshwane School of Music, The Real DJ Zandi, Kutlo Taro Jazz Band and many others. Tickets are just 80 Rand and 50 Rand for kids under 12 via Quicket. Jazz for Young People is proudly brought to you by Standard Bank Joy of Jazz.
Mzansi, for as little as 5 Rand, you can play Powerball for an estimated 84 million Rand jackpot this Tuesday. That's right, play Powerball for an estimated 84 million Rand jackpot today, and you could be celebrating multi-millions. Buy your tickets now in-store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120*7529# for USSD. Panda Pusha Play. Players must be 18 years or older. Play responsibly. Ituba is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
#SAFM Talking Point.
I think where we are missing it is the context. When you say independent, you can say in different context. So when I meant independent, I meant they do not have any personal benefits, they do not have any direct interest on the process, and they meet the expectations, and they are experts in their own right, and they are professionals. That's what I meant.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Good day, Cathy. The way that it's working in the ANC is, so Ramaphosa is basically, he's firing people gradually because he has to, you must remember, these people came into power because of like factionalism. So they get into power, like the education minister, because there's some kind of power struggle, some kind of fascism. So they get some seat, and then he has to take them away. But he can't do so across the board, or because so many of the people around him are corrupt. I mean, in his own cabinet, you know. So from his perspective, he's acting in a way that he has to be, he's almost clandestine. He has to be clandestine, because he has to take people out who are not going to destabilize the ANC and throw his faction out of power. And he also has to balance that with the interests of the public. So this is a very good leader we have, okay? But what comes after him is what's more scary to me.
Good morning, Cathy. How are you? 2Gs, Pretoria. This thing of ministers being fired, there's nothing to write home about. If somebody is fired, they must go home and look for another job. But these people are just being redeployed. There's no firing here. We are being made fools here. It's just being redeployed. They find themselves somewhere within the system as well. So nothing to write home about here. Thanks.
Morning, Cathy. Morning, Cathy. The government increasing the prices of the tariffs of electricity, water, groceries to unaffordable levels. They steal all the money. Yeah, we are being oppressed. We are being oppressed. Guaranteed. There's no other way. They steal all the money and then expect us to pay for it. We are being oppressed. Oh, thanks, Cathy.
Good morning. It's Cosnary speaking here. Look, my sister, you see, for the president of this country is a failure. By him trying to chase or actual chasing out Chauke, he's trying to buy trust from the South Africans, of which is not going to get, because we saw him numerous times failing to take a right decision. Yet right now he's failing to take a right decision through Mchunu, just because he's his friend, he's his comrade, but other people he try to chase them. Ramaphosa is a big failure.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
We continue the conversation on the open line. It is your national roundtable, and I'm still taking your calls on 086 000 2032, on the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107. Lefoko, you're in Joburton. Good morning.
Morning, Cathy. I've come to a disappointing conclusion that Ramaphosa is one of them now. You know.
Ooh, Lefoko, what does that mean? What does that mean?
No, he's one of them. The people that we thought cannot be trusted, because the day before this Nkabane lady has to go in front of Parliament with those so-called board members, all of a sudden she gets fired. I am of the belief that Nkabane got instructions from Ramaphosa and Luthuli House with those names of those board members. So for her to reveal such, it's going to be a problem for Ramaphosa. Ramaphosa is one of them, because you cannot tell me that this bandit thing that Mkhwanazi was talking about, it was started by Ramaphosa. He's the one who created that unit. Are you telling me he didn't know that Mchunu had the influence of disbanding that particular unit, the one he created, he started? Come on, Cathy, this guy is so disappointing. He is so disappointing, and I believe he's one of them. And thank you for the South Africans last year for voting the way they voted, because this Nkabane lady would still be in a minister if the ANC had the majority. And I hope that going forward, that the ANC never ever gets majority again in this country, because Ramaphosa has shown us he's one of them, and it means all of them, they are just part of a same bunch of crooks in this country.
Sure, Lefoko. Wow, okay. Yeah, some very strong sentiments there out in Joburton. Bongani, you're out in Bloom. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mrs. Cathy. It's actually my first time calling in.
Oh, welcome, Bongani. Great to have you on the line.
Yeah, thank you. I've been listening to SAFM for a long time now. Yes, I'm going to go straight to my point. So, the first thing that comes to my mind when I look at what is happening in South Africa, and specifically with the ANC, with Ramaphosa, is that Ramaphosa managed to fool all of us in South Africa. I remember when he became president, there was this sense of hope. There was this sense of renewal, as if we don't know that it comes from the ANC. Excuse me. as if we don't know that he's been always part of the ANC. He does not come from a different political party. He doesn't have a different background of politics. His train of thoughts is exactly the same as his other comrades. So I think he managed to fool us. I mean, I remember even myself, the way I was rejoicing when he became president. You know, sometimes I caught myself singing along these ANC people, you know, Panama, Ramaphosa, Ixesha Lisonde, because there was this sense of, oh man, this guy, you know, yes, he comes from the ANC, but he has a background of business, he's a billionaire, you know, maybe he's going to think differently. But when you look at things now, you realize that all of us, at least for myself, I'm talking, that we were fooled. The ANC is rotten to the core. All of these people that, you know, get, you know, removed from their positions, they just recycle them. You know, they remove them. Once things are heating up in this department, they remove the person, and they just wait for us, you know, South Africans to forget, and then that person will mushroom in another department. It's a cycle until we as South Africans rise up and say enough is enough of this. We need somebody else. And to be honest, that's one of the, and I'm about to finish now, that's one of the dilemmas that we have in South Africa. That when you look at the political parties, the political structures of South Africa, you don't see any political party that absolutely stands out, you know, where you can say, man, they look different, they talk different, they have a different record, this is what they've done. It's almost hopeless. But I guess we can't give up for our sake and for our children's sake.
You know, Bongani, as you and Lefoko were speaking, because I think you've shared similar reflections this morning,
Yes.
It's taken me back to how the campaign for the Ramaphosa presidency was framed. And
Yes.
perhaps that's part of why hearing South Africans and hearing you guys say what you're saying, you know, I would feel is such an indictment on his presidency. Because
Absolutely.
the narrative was one of a good and a bad ANC, right?
Yeah.
That we're getting rid of the bad people in the ANC. It's the good people have taken over now. And
Yeah.
the face and the leader of the good people is Cyril Ramaphosa.
Yeah.
And so when the both of you speak about being lied to, it really also highlights the broken promise of the presidency,
Absolutely.
that it has not lived up to the promise of what South Africans were told it would be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's very shameful. It's very shameful. You know, when we grew up, I'm not an old man, I'm in my 40s. When we grew up as children, you know, even as a child, you have this sense of, you know, hope that one day the ANC will come into power and South Africa will be a different country, it will be a different place. But when you look at what has happened, it's like, and of course I'm not one of those who will condone the apartheid and say it was better in the days of apartheid. No, apartheid was absolutely evil. But I think it's even more shameful that when you take over as the ANC and you say these people are evil, they've been mistreating us, they've been killing our people, and now we are the ones taking, you know, power. And then you don't produce anything different. You don't do anything that is different from what the apartheid has done. Instead of taking the nation forward, you take them backward. But thank you very much, Cathy.
All right.
I'm glad I was able to share my thoughts.
All right, Bongani, thanks for that call. Yeah, I think Lefoko's words are going to stay with me for some time. You heard what he said. He said he's one of them. He's one of the crooks in inverted commas. Sure, that's a stinging remark. It's a stinging remark. Mtandeki, you're in Kroonstad. Good morning.
Cathy, firstly, my comment is with regard to the unfortunate moment our kids are finding themselves in Europe now. In Spain, apparently, the arrangements that were made to ferry them back were squatted somewhere. I don't know what happened. But my question on this on the issue is, where is DA from Western Cape, Kharuba, this lady? Where is they are saying about the kids from Western Cape? Are they summoning the MEC responsible to account to the legislature? They are quiet. That's the first point. Coming to the question of the president's decision to release the minister, he's now the former minister. You see, first, Kate, let me express my appreciation for listening to my concern 2 weeks back. Whenever we call as public here, you don't just take that as the wisdom is going through. You interrogate the view. Thanks for that, Cathy. But the decision by the president, our fellow countrymen, we should understand running the country as a president. It's not like running your family. You have to apply a range of laws that surround around you as the head of the state. Now, you cannot just because we are making noise, we take a decision now, we can't right, therefore dismiss a censor. It doesn't work in that way, fellow members of the public. I kindly request, please, there is this guy, I really passionately listen to him, Nkanta from Durban. This guy is very eloquently influential on the issue that he raises. Therefore, Casey, I'm saying, let's continue and familiarize ourselves with the constitution of our country, the law of this country. It's not the law of America or the law of China. It's South African law.
Okay. All right. Mthandeki, we'll leave it there in Kroonstad. And the story, of course, that he's talking about is, these young people, they were in Spain for a soccer tournament, and it's a football academy that's out in Cape Town, and they seem to have had an issue in as far as the booking of their return flights to South Africa was concerned. So it looks like the academy booked their flights there, but didn't book the return flights because they were waiting for the prices to change because they were too expensive and were out of budget. But now the prices, since this tournament has come and gone, simply did not change. So you have families in a situation now where they have to fork out the money to pay for these tickets. And there's quite a significant shortfall. I think it's about 15,000 Rand per child that they would need to pay just to get return tickets to, back to the country. And one just wonders, why was the planning so shoddy? And these are young kids, between 13 and 18. These are young children. Their parents had already paid monies for them to go on this. My understanding is that it was about 50,000 Rand per child that parents paid. Of course, they want to support their children. They're grooming them in soccer, and we all know what great opportunities might lie in the future for their children if they get to succeed in it. But that's where things stand. Right now, I haven't seen anything that suggests that government is going to get involved in the rescuing of the situation, and it looks like they're just waiting for the booking of tickets. My producer Lebo says that government is paying for their hotel in Portugal. So I guess if they're paying for the hotel, then we could well see even further support for them. But it must be quite a stressful situation for those young children and also for their families. Let's take a break, and we're back with more on the other side of this.
Champions need motivation above and beyond winning. South Africa, show your love and support for the WAFCON defending champions by Yana. Witness the CAF Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024 from 5 to 26 July 2025 on SABC Plus, S3, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC radio stations. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Hear the rhythm, feel the heat at the Imbaula Music Festival in partnership with SAFM, where music, culture and community come alive. Join us on the 2nd of August 2025 at Pretoria Botanical Gardens from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. to vibe to Sanal musicians Calvin Momo, Amanda Black, Zing Lumalo, Trompis, and many more. More than just music. Share stories, spark change, and unite against gender-based violence. Grab your tickets at imbaula.co.za. Brought to you by SAFM and SABC1. Hear the rhythm, feel the heat. Imbaula. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
My name is Sintabiseng Majia. I play as a striker. Between working at a farm and a salon, I'd go to the farm because I love animals. We're sitting nicely, playing music, make some jokes, forget about anything that I'm going through. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects like Wi-Fi.
Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, we continue the conversation on the Talking Point. Is still your national roundtable. So on one of the subjects that has been very topical this morning, the firing of the Higher Education Minister. She was supposed to be in Parliament right now as we speak. The Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Higher Education is continuing with its session. I want to take just a couple of minutes of what's coming out of there. Lord Isaac, I see you. I will take you before we go to news at 10.
With the President's announcement, this committee have done very well. And we to continue with what we're doing. No one must come here and think we are fools and do as they wish and corrupt the entity and rob the children that needs to benefit from this department of their future. So I think I support what you're proposing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sols.
Honorable Chairperson, there's wisdom in knowing when to stop and move on. This cannot now become about the former minister. It was about accountability and what was done wrong. The question before us should not be, should people be held accountable? The answer is yes. The former minister should be held accountable. The question should be, should that accountability process continue in this committee? That's the question. There are other processes, parliamentary processes, where she would have to appear. And the statements that we received was what we were going to use as evidence to probe. If I'm now going to ask these questions again, Chairperson, I'm going to get answers like I'm answering for myself. I'm going to get answers like, and what are we going to use it for? Let us not be emotional. We have achieved our aim. We have done what was in our power to do. Let's now hand it over to the other structures to deal with it, and then we provide oversight, because it's still a matter that impacts our committee and our sector. So we can be watchdogs over it if we want to. But here, let's move on. Let the evidence be given in the other structures where this matter will still be continued to be heard, and let us continue with what we still have jurisdiction over. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I like how you guys time yourself. 4 seconds left, 3 seconds, you close it. Today, you are doing well for yourselves. Colleagues, there's a principle in law called the principles of natural justice. What does it do? It says if somebody alleges, in order for you to give an opinion over what somebody has alleged, you must give the other person who is alleged against a responsibility to respond in order for you to close the matter, right? So, legal says that the minister, we were questioning whether the minister lied to this committee. This is what we're doing here. Whether the minister lied or misled this portfolio committee by saying that she had an independent panel that dealt with the matter. That is why we asked the meeting. I will refer you to your own resolutions of the meetings of the 18th of June. What do you say there? You said we want to get to the bottom of whether the minister lied or not. And therefore, Chairperson, write to the panelists and ask them to give us written responses by the 25th of June and tell us what is it that, what was their role in this thing, whether this thing existed or not. But you colleagues said, we want to prove that the minister lied or did not lie. So that is the primary reason for this thing. That is what, now the minister, whether she lied or not now, there's nothing that we will do. She's no longer in our space. There's a different committee that now can deal with that particular issue. This is the ethics committee that Honorable Khakhaus did there. But we can't, when we continue with the matter, legally, Phumelele, maybe help us. Legally, how will us continue with the panelists help this committee?
All right, so as you can hear, the Parliament still grappling with the issue of what must happen next now that Nobuhle Nkabane is no longer the Minister of Higher Education. You heard there the chair of that committee, Tebogo Litsie. Let me go to Loward. You're in Gauteng. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. Quickly, from my vantage point, Cathy, the wheel is slowly turning and an axe is gradually grinding with regard to the efforts to rid our country from corruption, incompetence, and arrogance based on political will. Cathy, just in the recent past, Premier Lesotho in Gauteng, he removed or replaced the HODs who failed or who were found wanting by the SIU investigations findings regarding the lifestyle audits. And then he even mentioned that even his colleagues in the political sphere, he alerted them that the lifestyle audit is coming to everyone. So if I can juxtapose what Premier Lesotho has done with the president by sacking Dr. Nobuhle Nkabane, Cathy, we have to be appreciative to the fact that something it is being done with regard to the fight against the rampant corruption which has bedeviled our country. In Mpumalanga, as my last point, Cathy, Premier Mandandov, he acted against the former MEC, Ms. Cathy Mohlahlana, who was also found wanting for the procurement of those laptops who were inflated. So, on my point, on my side, I embrace what is being done, even though it is slowly, but I appreciate what is being done in the fight against corruption, which is a disease or a cancer which is troubling us as a country. So that is my point this morning, Cathy, that even the suspension of the Gauteng High Court DPP advocate Enrique Auke, it is long overdue, Cathy, because the man has been mired in controversial or prosecutorial controversies in that position. He has been mentioned in the state capture findings because he was enabling, allegedly, he was enabling the state capture by protecting the politicians and the high-profile people.
Okay.
So, yes,
All right.
Myself, I embrace what is going on. Yes,
Okay, Loward. We've heard you loud and clear. Loward out in Gauteng. Well, it's 10 o'clock now. Time for the latest news update.
Thank you, Cathy. Top stories this hour: court to rule on NPA's request in Omotoso case, and Parliament looks into issues of national security. Good morning. Judge Irma Skuman is expected to deliver her judgment in the application by the state for clarification on the acquittal of televangelist Timothy Omotoso and his co-accused Lusanda Sulani and Zukiswa Sito today. This after the National Prosecuting Authority sent a request for clarification of factual findings in Skuman's judgment after she found Omotoso and her co-accused not guilty on charges of racketeering, human trafficking and rape in April. She ruled that the state failed to prove the case beyond reasonable doubt, claiming that there was not enough evidence provided and poor cross-examination by the state. Nandi Paplaki takes a look.
On Monday last week, this matter was heard in the Gqeberha High Court in the Eastern Cape, where the state and defense were required to argue the matter. This application is the first step of the National Prosecuting Authority towards appealing the judgment. The NPA presented its case, requesting the presentation of factual findings. The defense lawyer, Peter Doberman, was against the application, claiming that this was vague and an abuse of the court process. Nandi Paplaki, SABC News, Gqeberha.
As schools reopen for the third term, the Department of Basic Education, together with SAPS, are raiding different schools in Inanda Township, north of Durban. The operation is aimed at promoting safety and rooting out drugs as well as weapons at schools. Inanda, which is known for its high crime rates, criminal elements has for the past 2 years recorded the highest cases of serious crimes, including murder and rape. It alleges that many schools in this township are affected by influence of the West gang that is terrorizing their community. Department of Basic Education spokesperson Elijah Mhlanga.
We aim to send a strong message that we can no longer allow crime and criminality in our schools because it affects the future of our children, it affects our learners, it disrupts teaching and learning as well in our schools. So we are saying communities must know right from day one of the third term that we can't allow and normalize crime and criminality in our schools.
Parliament's Police and Justice and Constitutional Development Committees are meeting this morning to discuss the terms of reference that will outline the work of an ad hoc committee as a means for the institution to look into issues of national security. This after the Speaker of the National Assembly, Thoko Didiza, instructed these two portfolio committees as well as the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence to consider on an urgent basis revelations by the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner, Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, of political interference in police at the highest level. Last week, the committee decided that it would recommend to the National Assembly that an ad hoc committee is the best vehicle to look into these matters. They are expected to report back to the National Assembly tomorrow. In other news, the South African Federation of Trade Unions will today march to Netlek to protest against proposed amendments to labour laws. The protest targets what SAFTU calls detrimental changes to Labour Relations Act, Basic Conditions of Employment Act, National Minimum Wage Act and the Employment Equity Act. The Federation says it views the changes as weakening worker protections and potentially leading to apartheid-style dismissals. Lebogang Kanyeko is SAFTU's national organizer.
We are going to have a second protest for this year. We had our first protest on Midday. We are going directly now to Netlek, where these dialogue policies are being discussed. So we are uniting with different formations, civic formations, your casual workers advice office, your independent unions, your legal officers. All of them were going to protest. We're going to give the memorandum of demand to the executive director of SNEDLEC.
One of the players from the BT Football Academy in Kraaifontein, Cape Town, says he noticed several red flags during their trip to Spain. 19-year-old Chet Harper was among a group of youth taking part in a football tournament when they were left stranded overseas. He was one of around 10 players who managed to raise funds for a flight back home.
When we left Cape Town, I kind of suspected something wasn't right, but I didn't want that to impact me emotionally and mentally. We were so close to missing our flight, and then I was like, okay, something's up. So then we went from Cape Town to Doha, and then at Doha was when I stayed for quite a few hours there, when I was supposed to leave in an hour and a half.
And finally, there have been further falls on Asian stock markets in response to the sweeping global import taxes announced by U.S. President Donald Trump. China's markets are closed for a public holiday. The BBC's Mariko Oy has the details.
Today we saw a fall of about 3%, and today Japan's Nikkei is now down by more than 4%. South Korea's Kospi down about 1.5% to 2% as well, so extending their losses after European markets and then Wall Street continue the global market sell-off. One of the reasons that investors are concerned about is even though Mr. Trump was quoted as saying that these tariffs would fix America's economy, many economists are warning that this could actually tip the U.S. economy into a recession.
The top story this hour, Judge Irma Schoeman is expected to deliver her judgment in the application by the state for clarification on the acquittal of televangelist Timothy Omotoso and his co-accused Lusanda Sulani and Zukiswa Sito today. Ondelampana has the headlines at 10:30 for SAFM News. I'm Kolofelo Tefo.
Hi, I'm Gabriela Salgado, Banyana player. Any song from Chris Brown could literally put me in the mood and make sure that I'm good to go. My favorite motivational quote, trust the process, but know that God is with you, you will always succeed. Between being a pilot and driving a bus, definitely a pilot to see the world and to take people along with me. South Africa, tune in to SABC Sport as we take on the Giants in the WAFCON. We are the champions. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects.
Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Hey, want to check your TV license balance conveniently? Look no further. Our SMS service allows you to do just that. By sending a message containing your ID or TV license number to 44210, you can quickly access your balance without needing multiple inquiries or waiting on hold. Plus, standard SMS rates apply. Take advantage of this efficient method to stay informed and streamline your payment process today. T's and C's apply.
Gender-based violence is destroying lives and tearing communities apart. It happens in homes, in schools, at workplaces, and too often in silence. But it doesn't have to continue. If you see it, speak out. If you are hurting, reach out, because doing nothing is not an option. Listen to all 19 SABC radio stations from Wednesday the 23rd of July for hard talk, discussions, advice, dramas, educational shows and interviews around GBV with experts, survivors, lawmakers and a whole country affected by gender-based violence. All on your favorite SABC radio station. Call 0800 428 428 to report abuse or get help. GBV, it ends with you. This message is brought to you by the SABC. SAFM, in collaboration with the Standard Bank Joy of Jazz, brings you the Jazz for Young People concert happening at the National School of the Arts on the 26th of July 2025. Tune in to Seasons and the soundtrack of your life, broadcasting live. This unique event is a powerful celebration of youth, creativity, and community spirit. Bring the whole family to enjoy a wonderful day of world-class jazz from young musicians, curated by Zoe Mudicha, featuring National School of the Arts Band, Willow Crescent Magnet School of Music Band, Biko's Manor, and many others. Have fun while doing good. Tickets are available at Quicket for just 80 Rand and 50 Rand for kids under 12. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Mzansi, for as little as 5 Rand, you can play Powerball for an estimated 84 million Rand jackpot this Tuesday. That's right, play Powerball for an estimated 84 million Rand jackpot today, and you could be celebrating multi-millions. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529 hash for USSD. Panda Pusha Play. Players must be 18 years or older. Play responsibly. Ituba is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
You're listening to The Talking Point. Welcome to the second hour of the show. It's 11 after 10 o'clock. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking finance with Brian Hirsch. And today, we're looking at setting up trusts and when it's in your best interest to use a trust to facilitate some of your affairs. So Brian is going to be breaking it all down for us shortly. Before we get into that, lots of WhatsApp voice notes on different issues today. We'll take some of those voice notes and then go straight into Brian.
Cathy, there's an MEC from the Western Cape that has gone over to go and find out for himself what the situation is. Yeah, so your caller was incorrect to say, you know, the Western Cape government is quiet. Someone has already gone over. Teresa from Cape Town.
Morning, Sis Cathy and the listeners, Edwin and Bloemfontein. What happened to ANC step aside rule? What happened to it now? It has been changed, or they think we've forgotten about it. Now people have been fired, but they've been redeployed somewhere. They're still paying the same salaries. It's only changing the portfolio, is working under another portfolio. We are not going to make fools here by ANC. We know what is happening. When you are fired, you have to step aside. That's what we know.
Hi, Cathy. This is KM. You know what, Cathy? I just want to advise or to give a word of mouth to the leadership, women in leadership. You know, women sometimes they forget that we are living in a patriarchal society, and then they are being used by these men and then to do these shenanigans. Look now what happened to Mrs. Ngabane. She was supposed to be the woman of fortitude to fight for the rights of the young people in the university. She was supposed to be focused and do what she was supposed to do. But look now what happened. She was arrogant in the parliament when they asked her about the credibility of a person. She even said the people must refer to Google and encyclopedia. That's not right. It was not right. She was supposed to stand for herself and be a woman of fortitude. Thank you very much.
Magazine Tatani and SA listeners, you are speaking to Khoso Twaye from Togoza. Magazine Tatani, remember Julius Malema prediction when he says the pig is going to eat its own children, and then he says again, Malema says again. Malema says again, the elephant, we're going to eat the elephant piece by piece. You know, you see now what happened to ANC now. I feel sorry for Ramaphosa. Ramaphosa must eat his own children. Those who are corrupt in cabinet, one by one. I feel sorry for ANC because the declining of ANC. I feel sorry for them. I feel sorry. Bye.
My name is Cathy. This is Subsim Bloemfontein. Can I ask, or can I get the clarity here about this national dialogue? How to participate on it? Will us at the ground, like, we will have opportunity to submit our views there, or have an essay or have an input on that national dialogue? Will an ordinary person like me have an input on the national dialogue?
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM. Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
Brian Hirsch, a warm welcome back to studio for you.
Thank you. Lovely holiday away.
I see you're nice and well rested.
Well rested. Well, I'm energized. I don't know how you can see rest. You can see energy on my
Not
face.
a wrinkle in sight, Brian.
No, not a wrinkle in sight. You know.
Love it
energy,
for you.
Love it. Firstly, let me thank Sandy for stepping in for me the last few weeks. I must tell you, I had a great holiday, but I have a simple philosophy in life. Can I look forward to the first day back from holiday as much as the day I go on holiday? And can I look forward to Monday morning as much as I look forward to Friday afternoon? And I can categorically state that I do. So I'm pleased to be back. And this morning, our program is very much geared to the elder listener of our program. The elder listener, particularly involved in why you have a trust, and most important, the difficulty of the power of attorney and how that's changed in South Africa. That's what we're dealing with this morning.
I know you think it's geared towards an older audience, Brian, but the reality is that trusts are becoming something that people want to set up because they want to manage their affairs. So you've got lots of young people too.
But particularly the power of attorney. Young people don't tend to need to give a power of attorney. But let me get into the subject.
I think, what I would also want us to do, please, Brian, is just to talk about who needs to set up a trust. Because, again, it's one of the things that we get questions about so often because people just want to know. And I also know that it's part of what happens in our politics, right? Because wherever, you'll have business people or even government officials turned business people. I'm trying to be careful with my words here. There's always talk about a trust involved somewhere and that people hide monies in trusts, and that's how they make sure that even if they're caught in a scandal, the money's safe somewhere in a trust. So let's start at the beginning, Brian.
Well, let me make the comment. The use of trusts in South Africa has been definitely overplayed. I regularly come across clients who have created trusts that are dormant with no assets in these trusts. It seems like they've sold the idea of a trust, but they don't know how to put assets in. And the reason is very much, for example, if you want to transfer property, the big thing is, should I be transferring a property into trust? Understand the most important thing. When setting up a trust, if you're trying to avoid any legal action against you, if you think you owe money and you want to rather transfer your assets into a trust so that you can hide the assets, it doesn't work any longer. It doesn't work because it's easy to look through those trusts. When did you get into financial difficulty? When did you establish a trust? And today, trusts need to have accounts. They needed to be audited, and there's a whole new regime. Globally, trusts have been well managed by independent trustees, and the people going into trust couldn't play games. In South Africa, we played games for so many years with trusts. You can now see through that trust what the assets are. But to give you an example, to transfer a property into a trust, you've got to understand the property needs to be revalued. If there's a gain, there's capital gains tax that's going to be paid, and you're going to have to pay transfer fees. But I'm going to come back to that shortly about the reasons for a trust. In recent times, the big benefit of asset in a trust or transferring in a trust relates very much to individuals who are no longer capable of managing their own affairs. Let me explain to you. If you give someone power of attorney, and that's why I mentioned maybe our older listeners, the average youngster won't be giving anyone power of attorney. It's the older generation who say, I may not be capable any longer of managing my own affairs. Let me give someone power of attorney. The problem with that is, again, overlooked by many institutions. They haven't in the past asked, Cathy, I give you a power of attorney. Cathy, are you sure that power of attorney is acting? Because the minute in South Africa a person becomes incapable of managing their own affairs, becomes incapacitated, that power of attorney comes to an end. And in previous years, if you had that power of attorney, the institutions or bodies you were dealing with didn't ask those questions. Well, can we have proof that that person is still capable of managing their own affairs? Globally, they have what's called an enduring power of attorney. An enduring power of attorney goes on for lifetime. In South Africa, we do not have that. Many applications have been made to government to amend that, because the point is, the difficulty if you are no longer managing your own affairs is you can either go into what's called administration for very much smaller estates, or you have to get hold of a curator. And a curator is not only costly, anything between 50 to 100,000. It has to go through the High Court. There are costs involved. There's attorneys and advocates involved. So what I'm saying to listeners is very simply, before I get onto all the advantages, if you have a power of attorney and you've given it to a son, a family member, a lawyer, an accountant, whatever the case may be, and you are no longer capable of managing those affairs, your power of attorney comes to an end. So now let's look at this difficulty. You've given someone a power of attorney, you're no longer capable, their power of attorney is no longer valid. Who's going to manage your financial affairs? Who's going to get access to your bank account? Who's going to pay your bills of life? Who's going to be able to, if you need to sell a property and move into a retirement home, who's going to do all that for you? And you can't do that. So the creation of a trust now, while you're in good skills, and I know there are costs to the trust, but there's a cost if you want to make sure that your affairs are in order. And creating a trust and transferring your assets into a trust, appointing trustees, they can now manage your affairs when you are incapacitated or no longer mentally sound to manage your affairs. Now, there are many situations where people have got power of attorney, and fortunately the person giving the power of attorney has now got not Alzheimer's, but what's the word I'm looking for, Cathy? Dementia. Got dementia. So you transfer your assets into a trust. Those assets are now kept in the trust, and you've got someone looking after the trust. So that is the big reason for having a trust and creating a trust. You've got to look at the value. You've got to look at the cost of the trust. The other reasons for having a trust is firstly to protect children in the event of your death. Children under the age of 18, and Cathy, I just need to have age of 18 cannot inherit. So if in your will, I've been dealing with the creation of a trust called an inter vivus trust, and I'm now that's when you create a trust during your lifetime. But on death, you have a trust that's called, and you just excuse me, I just need to.
So sorry about that, Brian. Yeah, let me get you a bottle of water. Here we go. Maybe let's do this. Shall we take a quick break? And then we're going to continue with the show shortly.
Gender-based violence is destroying lives and tearing communities apart. It happens in homes, in schools, at workplaces, and too often in silence. But it doesn't have to continue. If you see it, speak out. If you are hurting, reach out, because doing nothing is not an option. Listen to all 19 SABC radio stations from Wednesday, the 23rd of July for hard talk, discussions, advice, dramas, educational shows, and interviews around GBV with experts, survivors, lawmakers, and a whole country affected by gender-based violence. All on your favorite SABC radio station. Call 0800 428 428 to report abuse or get help. GBV, it ends with you. This message is brought to you by the SABC.
Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
All right, we continue
Yeah,
talking finance with
fully
Brian.
recovered. So
Back to trust.
So the second reason for forming a trust, if in a will you're leaving assets to children, and you would set up in the will what's called a testamentary trust. So that's different to the creation of a will of your assets in a trust while you're alive. This is now a trust that is formed on your death when you want to leave assets to your children. Because children, as I said, can't inherit if they're younger than 18. If you don't have trust, then how are those assets on behalf of your children managed? And secondly, I don't think parents would like their children to inherit large sums of money at the age of 18. At age of 18, you want your child to be carrying on with studies and not having a large amount of money to squander. So often in a trust, you would say, the trust must look after my children, and at age 25 or 30, the trustees can determine whether to pass on assets to the children if they satisfy the children are mature enough and can look after those assets. So that's a big reason for having what's called a testamentary trust, which comes about. The next reason is the ability to save inheritance taxes. That's what's known in the world. We call it death duties. Death duties, any assets passed on between a husband to a wife or a wife to a husband are free of death duties, but any assets passed on, and ultimately, if a husband leaves assets to a wife and then there's no inheritance or death duty paid, but when the wife pays on, it's really a deferment, death duties will be paid. Each party gets the first 3.5 million rand of their assets free of death duties, up to 7 million for both husband and wife. But thereafter, if money goes to children, up to 30 million, 20% is paid in death duties, and over 30 million, 25%. So having a trust, you can put growth assets into a trust, which means the value of your growth assets when you put them into a trust form part of your estate. So let's assume you've got 2 million rands worth of assets and you put that into a trust. Your estate will still have that 2 million, but if that 2 million over the next 25 years grows to 15 or 20 million, that will not attract estate duty. So the second reason for having a trust is to avoid death duties by planning your estate now. The third reason is if you've got a business and you've got assets in your own name, any assets, if you're signing personally for your business and something happens to the business, then people could claim against you. If you've got those assets housed in a trust, and I make the point again, legitimately, you haven't quickly because you know your business has got into trouble, so you've moved assets into a trust. There will be a look-through situation and you won't avoid any creditor or in any liquidation of your assets. What will happen is you will still, so if you have those assets in a trust and as you grow and the business gets into trouble, no one can attack those assets, as well as succession planning for your family. Because if you've got assets in a trust, you think about a husband and a wife, the husband dies, the wife gets remarried, assets passed on to her may go to the new husband and other children, not your own children. So you use a trust to make sure the assets are protected for your family and only your family, not any extension of a family in the years to come. And those are the reasons. So the main important point is, Cathy, the power of attorney. So many of our listeners have given people power of attorney. You need to understand, I repeat, that power of attorney ends when you are no longer capable of managing your affairs. And that's where the importance of considering a trust so that your affairs can be looked after. Your rent can be paid. If a property's got to be sold and all the bills of life and what happens.
Okay, we're going to continue the conversation with Brian. I've got a couple of questions for you, Brian, and I know some of you listening may also have your own questions. I'll be taking your calls on 086 000 2032. That's the number to dial for our studio line, and you can send through some of your questions for Brian on 0614 104 107. For now, let's take you over to the news desk for the latest news headlines. It's 10:30.
Thank you, Cathy. On the news headlines on SAFM, I am Ondelambana, and a very good morning. The Gqeberha High Court in the Eastern Cape has dismissed the state application for clarification of facts on the judgment handed by Judge Irma Skuman acquitting televangelist Timothy Omotoso and his co-accused Lusanda Sulani and Zuki Zwazito. A 40-year-old man has been arrested in connection with the murder of the chief auditor of the Ekurhuleni municipality, Mpho Mafule. He was found in a pool of blood after he was sprayed with bullets on the R23 in Campton Park on the 30th of June. And dairy farmers in KwaZulu-Natal say they have been severely impacted by foot and mouth disease and the new restrictions imposed by government to contain the spread. The province has reported 191 outbreaks with 172 still active. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
My name is Fikile Makama. I'm from Cape Town and I'm a defender. Between city life and village life, I will choose village life. I like being around people. I would like to say to my friends back home, they know where I come from. They've seen my struggles. So me being here is me representing them and my family. We are the champions. Where Africa competes, South Africa connect.
Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Spar brings you super savings. Get Pampers Baby Dry Nappies or Nappy Pants Jumbo Pack for $229.99. Save 70 Rand. 2-ply Baby Soft Toilet Rolls 24s for $159.99. Save 56 Rand. Or 50ml Shield or Axe Roll-On Deodorant. Buy any two for 40 Rand. Save 14 Rand. Plus, you could win your share of 6 million Rand in instant cash. Prices valid until 6 August 2025. While stocks last. T's and C's apply.
It's fire, flavour and fierce competition on the Tastemaster SA this Tuesday evening at 7:30 on SABC2. The semi-finals heat up as the final three transform the humble braai into a gourmet three-course showstopper, with Chef Sean Scrooby turning up the pressure. Who will flame out and who will sear their place in the grand finale? The Tastemaster SA, Tuesday evenings at 7:30, repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. on SABC2.
Well, taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand is currently trading at 17 rand 66 to the dollar, 23 rand 77 to the pound, and 20 rand 65 to the euro. Markets in Asia were mixed at the closing bell. The JSE red across the board in mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe also trading weaker this hour. Gold is trading at $3,387. Platinum $1,439 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $68.40 a barrel.
Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
Cathy, great news about what you just read. People don't realize Rand at 17.65 and the oil price at 68. Definitely next week, petrol we'll get a petrol reduction.
Crossing fingers,
no,
Brian.
definitely.
From your lips to DMRE's.
If we don't get a petrol reduction, ask me why, and I will speak to the powers. But I can tell you right now, we have to have a petrol reduction. Although I understand that normal petrol versus diesel, I understand there's a different pricing between those two types of petrol.
Yeah, diesel is unregulated.
Yeah, and all I'm saying is, but certainly general petrol price will come down.
Okay. All right. We'll wait, Brian, and like I said, obviously we'll cross fingers for that. We're talking about trusts with Brian this morning, and he's looking at when it's in your best interest to use a trust to, manage and facilitate your affairs. Brian, you've been making the point about the power of attorney and the fact that once you are incapable, for whatever reason, of managing your affairs, then that power of attorney comes to an end. What have you found then to be the situation? What is happening to people who are finding themselves in these circumstances? What is the plan that they need to have in place?
Most unsatisfactory, and until the law has changed to create what's called an enduring power of attorney for your lifetime, there's little you can do. And if someone's accessing your bank account and the bank say, I'd like to just speak to the person who's given you the power of attorney, and they are not satisfied, the power of attorney comes and there is nothing you can do. You can't pay your rent, can't pay your medical aid, you can do absolutely nothing. And up to now, the institutions and organizations have been a little bit delinquent. They haven't checked up. But there's new legislation saying that they have to satisfy themselves, because let me say this to you. In the event of your death years after that, your beneficiaries have a right to say that power of attorney was given to the person incorrectly, and all the actions taken by that individual can be held responsible for all actions if some of the beneficiaries are now excluded from a will. You can't change a will. You can do absolutely nothing. And then you can only apply for administration in very much smaller states. It still costs money, or go to curatorship. So that's why I'm pointing it out. It's changing the same way as the auditing of trusts. You spoke about people hiding assets in trusts. That see-through now is much more. Trustees are responsible. You need to have independent trustee. So an independent trustee who stands to be liable can be charged criminally if they've acted inappropriately. When you start to hide assets and you've got independent trustees, they're not going to be a trustee if you don't run that trust according to the regulations and all the necessary documentation and rules and regulations governing that trust.
So just to be clear that I understand you, Brian, then what should people be doing? Because if you say that there's nothing you can do,
you can create a trust.
No, I mean for those that are using power of attorney.
Yeah, there isn't absolutely nothing other than going the administration way, the curatorship way.
Yeah.
That's the way, and that takes time and it's costly. Or planning now, because when we talk about estate planning, it's not only about protection of loved ones in the event of premature death, death duties and liquidity at the time of death. It is making sure that everything goes through to last your lifetime. And the point I'm making today, the power of attorney is not enough if you are one of those unfortunate who are no longer capable. You need to think now, what do I do? Talk to financial advisors, talk to your accountant, talk to your lawyer, and probably set up a trust. That's the easiest way. All of the ways are costly. If you go curatorship, it's costly. Setting up trust is costly. But if you're planning your estate, that's the best way. You can't just say, well, my wife will look after my affairs. You won't be able to get into your bank account. And on top of it, there are a lot of accounts and things that need to be done during this time of, in terms of disability and incapability.
Is there a minimum entry level? So, I mean, how much,
there's no,
roughly, how much money do I need to have to set up a trust?
Okay, well, let's think about it with all your assets, including property, including savings, including monies that you may have from investments. I would say around 5 million rand upwards. I don't normally, Cathy, think about a trust for someone at 5 million. There I'm thinking of people who've got assets anything 15 million upwards. But to avoid the power of attorney problem, to avoid being left holding what in the event of you being disabled or unable to manage your affairs, I would say anything 5 million upwards, and that includes insurance as well. So a home, life insurance policies, investments. It does exclude retirement funds. Although, if you haven't yet retired and you're now disabled, you're not able to retire without someone managing and helping you through that process. But if you have retired, then your retirement income, your pension will just continue. But it's all the other aspects.
It's so interesting that you mentioned those figures, Brian, because I'm thinking, well, this is literally the 1% of South Africa, right? And yet the reality is often you will have many South Africans who, when they think about the legacy that they want to leave behind, not only for themselves, but even as families, you want to establish the Mohlahlana Family Trust. And we all sit and we talk about how this is a good idea. We must do that because then, we get to make sure that the family's name lives on, etc., etc. But if I'm hearing you clearly, it might not be the way to go, because the Mohlahlana Family Trust, maybe even if we all contribute, is not going to get close to 5 million rand.
Cathy, you think about it. A home today, 1.25 million rand. Savings of maybe another 600,000 or 700,000. Life insurance, protecting the family. We're talking about all assets at time of death. So whereas you say 5 million is not is many South Africans, it's not 1% of South Africans who don't have assets in total equaling 5 million. They may not feel rich. They may be what we call asset rich, income poor, but they could have assets. But I'm talking about for the older generation, for those who have power of attorney. You need to talk to someone what happens when that power of attorney ends. And then for the younger people who are building assets, we're talking about estate protection. We talk about saving of death duties. We talk about money going to children. How are you going to get money to children? When are you going to get that money to the children? Because you certainly don't want them inheriting, I would imagine, at age 18. I certainly wouldn't want my grandchildren inheriting money at age 18. I want my grandchildren to carry on with their education, because all we can give our children are two things. We can give them values and we can give them education. We can try to give them lots of other things, but those two things, we leave our children with those two things, we've done a good job.
And even that is such a good point. So are there other options? Again, I'll go back to the example of the Mohlahlana Family Trust. Are there alternative vehicles for individuals and families who think, well, we don't want another member of this family not being able to go and access school. So we are going to take whatever we can and contribute to this pot. And it should function in the same way as a trust. But I've now listened to Brian and I realized that we're not going to have 5 million in it. How else can people go about facilitating?
Well, with smaller amounts of money, they need to think about administration, but they need to talk to the parties, their accountants or lawyers again, to say, I don't have a lot of assets, but I am concerned. I can really start to feel I'm losing control. I had someone who came to see me yesterday. Seems okay, but he said to himself, I'm getting very forgetful. I'm 81 years old now. I'm not, So we're saying, you need to... I'm opening your eyes to what the issues are ahead with trusts. And everyone's circumstances are different. And if I've helped many people today to have this conversation with family members and parties to get to find some solution.
All right, Brian, I'm going to bring in some of our questions from the listeners. Remember, you can also call in on 086 000 2032 and on the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107. So, Brian, I'll start on the voice notes and let's begin with this question.
Hi, Cathy. My name is David. I have one question with your guest there on trust. Why would you give your trustee a power of attorney? Doesn't make sense there. No legal sense. A trustee has authority to administer the property under trust, without the power of attorney. The letter of trusteeship, which he obtains from the Master of the High Court, authorizes that trustee to deal with that property in terms of trust deed. No power of attorney involved there. I don't get this power of attorney thing from him. Can you explain on that? Thank you.
David, I was explaining when a power of attorney comes to an end. And I was explaining, then obviously, if you do create a trust, you're absolutely right. The trust deed will lay out who the trustees are. The trustee will lay out the rules of the trust. The trustees will also lay out exactly what the trustees are entitled to do. But in principle, any assets in the trust will be managed by the trustees. All trustees will be responsible. That's why I always encourage an independent trustee, not just family members, and the trust must be properly managed. It mustn't just be a trust that's used for your own benefit. We come across a lot of those type of trusts where a trust is set up and the individual who's what we call the founder or the settler manages all the assets and doesn't even really consult and just gets trustees just to sign documents. So you're absolutely right. The trust deed will determine exactly how the affairs of the assets that are held in the trust will be managed, how they will be dealt with, how assets will be distributed, how accounts will be paid, and so on.
Brian, how do you manage the trust and what the will says, especially in light of what you're saying about the authority of the trustee? If there's something that the will says, but a trustee feels like, well, this decision is no longer in the best interest of some of these affairs that we're managing. What do people do?
Cathy, a will deals with assets in the deceased's name. It has nothing to do with the trust. Assets that are in the trust are independent of that individual. That individual has passed over their assets to the trust. So someone who's got 10 million rands of assets in total, and they put 7 million into a trust and they've got 3 million in their own name. On their death, the will deal with that 3 million. The 7 million and the will, an executor will be appointed and the estate will be wound up and eventually settled in terms of the will. The trust will continue. A family trust will continue for lifetime unless the clause in the trust says it must end at a certain date. I don't like that ending at a certain date. The trustees must always have the right to extend the trust, particularly if assets are being left and people that are going to receive assets, investments or income from the trust are no longer capable. So it's very, very separate. Assets in a will deal with assets that you've left in your own name. Assets in a trust, you've divested yourself of those assets and they are controlled by the trustees. Usually I say there should be 3 trustees. Doesn't have to be, all decisions don't have to be unanimous, but certainly the majority of the 3 will rule.
All right, let me go to Larry in Cape Town. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning, Cathy and Brian.
Good morning, Larry.
Thanks for taking my call. I've got a question about the trust. You mentioned if there's a trust, there's no estate or death duty payable on the assets held in the trust. But what about the impact of capital gains on the revenue or the growth that occurs in the trust?
Okay. Firstly, let me just clarify. Assets transferred into the trust, obviously that will still be subject to assets of the individual because the individual will either have sold them in or loaned them in. But and also there's the attribution. So assets in the trust can be attributed to individual trustees, to individual beneficiaries rather. So and taxes can also be attributed to the individual. So with asset, because the asset, as you know, capital gains in the trust is double the capital gains of an individual. So if you're going to, you still have the right at this point in time. I know that the Davis Committee. The Davis Commission had recommended that the attribution model fell away, but that was not ever implemented. So, in other words, if you make a gain in the trust, you can attribute that to the individuals who are the beneficiaries, and they will pay tax at their tax rate, and so on. So you still have the ability to pay the capital gains and tax as individuals rather than at the 45% rate or the tax rate, the capital gains tax at the higher level.
Okay. All right.
Larry, does that help you?
I'm not quite understanding. I mean, if I've got investments, whether they're unit trusts or equity that are now decided for the sake of my son when I die, decide to put it into a trust. So if he wants to liquidate any of those assets in the future after I die, then how is that taxed? Is there capital gain on
Yes,
that?
yes. Your son would be the trust now has made a gain. And if obviously you don't want to pay the gain in the trust because, as I said, it's double the capital gains of the individual. So the trust would attribute that gain to your son. Your son would then pay the capital gains tax as if the asset was owned by him in his own name and not in the trust. But but from a death duty point of view, the amount paid would be pegged at the value that was introduced into the trust at the time of forming the trust, not at the current rate. So you would save enormously on death duties, and you would save on tax and capital gains tax because you wouldn't pay it in the trust, you would pay it as an individual. Hope that helps, Larry.
And his personal, as an individual, to pay that capital gains is at a lower then percentage than death duty.
Well, we're not. Well, he'd pay tax at his rate. In other words, the attribution to his name, whatever he's earning, that amount then would be added to his taxable income and pay tax. It'll always be lower than the tax paid in a trust.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Thanks, Larry.
All right. Very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for those questions. Let's take a break. Vuyani, we're back with you. And then, of course, more questions on the WhatsApp voice note line.
This Mandela Month, SAFM celebrates the spirit of Ubuntu, calling on all South Africans to engage, uplift, and do good for one another. Let's share what we have, lend a helping hand, and honor Madiba's legacy through kindness and action. Join SAFM as we bring you powerful conversations, inspiring stories, and voices that drive change all month long. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. The National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
How would you encapsulate what you heard and thought in one word?
Indecisive. Now, he's saying we must wait for 6 months before he can tell us whether or not he thinks his Minister of Police is a crook or not. And I think this is unacceptable, but it's unacceptable because we have let it continue this way. And that's why people, even some even are praising him for having a commission of inquiry. Why do you need a commission of inquiry? People in the security trust are supposed to be highly trustworthy. If they can't tell you the truth, why do you think that you should set up a commission of 3 judges at probably a huge cost for 6 months for them to tell you the truth?
Professor J.J. Tabane, who's the convener of the Frank Dialogue and editor of Leadership.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM. Find the podcast at safm.co.za.
Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
All right, so we'll continue the conversation looking at the issue of trust. Somebody says, P.S. I had no idea power of attorney comes to an end on a person's death. Very concerning. Thanks for alerting so many of us.
No, that's not correct. Obviously, it comes to end on your death. It comes to end when you are no longer capable of understanding what is happening with your assets and with your estate. So if you have dementia or something like that, that's when it comes to an end. If you're disabled and you can't carry on, so it does. Obviously, power of attorney ends on your death, because what happens is then the will takes over and the executor replaces the person that you've given the power of attorney, and often the executor has the power of attorney. Power of attorney ends when you are no longer capable.
Okay, thanks for that, Brian. Somebody else says, hello, Cathy. What do I do regarding a trust if a person has a maximum of 4 million rand, no property to sell, only savings, administration? Please have another program on just administration for those of us with less than 5 million rand assets. Thanks. That's from Jenny.
Yeah, Jenny, Cathy asked me when did I think, trust starts to make sense. Look, if you're in good health and everything's running fine and you can manage your own affairs, you certainly, with 4 million rand, don't need a trust. Unfortunately, if you find yourself in a situation when you suddenly start to feel that things aren't going as well as they have, and you're starting to get memory loss and all those things, then you've got to start thinking, who's going to manage my affairs, and that the power of attorney ends. But on 4 million, it's a different component. And by the way, the fact that assets go into a trust still means you still need investment advice. Who's going to advise the trustees on how those investments are handled? So this does not replace the need for financial advice. It just replaces the need for structure versus investment advice. Still, one needs investment advice. And if you've got assets of 4 million and they managed well, and you've got a financial advisor, and you're in good health and all that, then I don't think you need to worry. I'm just saying the many people who have power of attorneys need to understand, like we had the one caller who was not aware, and I come across people all the time who've given someone power of attorney, elder people who are not aware that that power of attorney ends.
One of our other listeners says, you don't need 5 million rand to start a trust, Cathy. Just 50,000 rand can do the job.
Well, I hear that, but then you've got to understand the return on 50,000 rand. Let's assume you're getting an 8% return is 4,000 rand. Running a trust, getting it audited and everything is going to cost you more than 4,000. So there is some financial calculations you need to do and to make sense of it.
All right. Khotso in Wonderboom. Good morning, Khotso.
Morning, Cathy.
Oh, morning. So sorry, Khotso.
Yes.
I thought that I had taken you already, and I'm surprised that your line is still up. Apologies for that.
Okay, it's fine.
Morning, Khotso. Morning.
Yeah, morning, Brian. Mine is on the issue of the will and the fiduciary, which is being held. The powers is held by banks. I think there's a new challenge now, or a crisis, which banks are giving to the clients which have put their will with them. And the unfortunate part is that banks, they will go out and hire the service of the very same attorneys. Because currently, as you can hear, the crisis which we are having in this country is about the judiciary, the courts, even the lawyers itself. The level of fraud which is happening in there is quite terrible. So for me, I want to check with you that for people or families who will be having some wills, can they have the powers and take away the powers from these unscrupulous lawyers and your judges and magistrates, and put it back to the office of the back to the Department of Justice under that office of the what's this? There's this office which deals specifically with family matters. In the Department of Justice.
Yeah, let me just jump in here because I know we're running to the end of our program. Look, you need, in every will you have to have an executor. And the banks do a fine job, the legal profession, the accounting profession. What you need to understand is that even though you may have someone in the bank that you know well, that you've done your will with, they are not going to wind up your estate. It's going to go into an estate department. I don't think you need to worry about fraud because they have to provide security to the master that your assets are protected. So I don't think you need to worry about that. My only argument with that very simply is the banks charge 3.5% plus VAT. And if you work that out on a large estate, it could be enormous. Now, if you had to appoint a family member who may not have the skills of actually winding up an estate, they could then go to the same bank or institution or legal or accounting firm and negotiate a lower fee. And secondly, if you appoint a bank and something happens to you, the only person that can change that executor is the deceased person. And if the bank take time and they're not doing a good job, you can't it's very difficult to take away the work from them. So if my wife is now the executor of my estate, and if she now appoints an attorney, she can negotiate the fee, and if the attorney doesn't do a good job, she can take it away. But I don't think you need to worry about if your will is with a sound organisation. Even with individuals, I don't think you need to worry about the fraudulent, because the master watches, and you have to provide. If you provide a friend as an executor, that friend's going to have to provide the master with security to protect your assets, so you are protected.
All right. Thanks for that question, Khoso. Okay. Vuyani, I think I'm going to get Vuyani, Brian, to also speak to you offline, because I'm just looking at the time. Maybe if I'm to squeeze in just one last voice note, and it's a question about buying a house.
Hi, Brian Quinton here from Worcester. I just want to know, I got somebody that wants me to buy a house in a trust, and then through a trust, and then she said it's going to be easier. So then the people that will be standing in for me in the trust, I can remove them in 2 months' time. Is it working like that? Is it possible like that? Because I'm struggling to get a house, if I can put that through normal ways. So see if I can get it in the trust, get 2 people that can assist me, and then we remove them after 2 months. Does it work like that?
I don't understand why you'd want to put a property that you're buying in a trust. Can't understand that. Simple enough. You buy a property, you put it in your name, you put it in your wife's or your name, whatever the case may be. And that, because it's the only asset, and why have a trust to manage your property? There's nothing to manage. I mean, you live in the property, you may have a bond, you pay the costs, you have insurance. I don't understand. And look, everyone's circumstances are different. Unless there's some unique situation, let me give my numbers out. You want to get hold of me, you can get hold of me at 011 880 4888. That's my radio line, 011 880 4888. And if you want to get hold of me, you can get me at www.bhca.co.za. And Vianney, I'll give you a call offline.
All right. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you, Brian, as always. Brian will be back next week on Tuesday between 10 and 11 o'clock. It's time for the latest news update.
Thank you, Cathy. On the top stories, court dismisses state's application in the Motoso judgment and 2 flights of air flight cancellations at Lanseria Airport. For SAFM News, I am Ondelambana, and a very good morning. The Gqeberha High Court in the Eastern Cape has dismissed the state application for clarification of facts on the judgment handed by Judge Irma Skuman acquitting televangelist Timothy Motosho and his co-accused Lusanda Sulani and Zuki Swasito. Delivering judgment, Judge Nyameko Qamana said the state is not entitled to clarification on the judgment. Motosho and his co-accused were facing a string of charges which included racketeering, human trafficking and rape, but were acquitted on all charges. A 40-year-old man has been arrested in connection with the murder of the chief auditor of the Ekurhuleni municipality, Mpho Mafole. He was found in a pool of blood after he was sprayed with bullets on the R23 in Campton Park on the 30th of June. Provincial Serious and Violence Crime Detectives are also searching for a second suspect in the matter after a warrant of arrest was issued for him by the court. The 40-year-old is expected to appear before the Campton Park Magistrates Court tomorrow. Police spokesperson Canal de Makato Nebuli.
The Provincial Serious and Violence Crime Detectives have made a breakthrough on the murder case of the chief auditor of Ekurhuleni municipality, who was shot dead earlier this month in Campton Park. On the 20th of this month, the team arrested a 40-year-old man who is expected to appear before Campton Park Magistrates Court on a charge of murder.
The case of 4 men arrested in connection with the murder of Oba John Safuga, more popularly known as DJ Somebody, has been postponed to the 29th of July at the Alexandra Magistrates Court north of Johannesburg. All 4 suspects were arrested in Gauteng yesterday afternoon. Safuga was killed in a hail of bullets in Woodmid in November 2022. 2 other people were killed in the same incident. Session Naidu reports.
All 4 suspects, 3 of which are alleged hitmen, together with the suspected mastermind of the hit, made a brief appearance in the dock before their case was postponed. The matter was postponed to allow the state time to further investigate the matter ahead of a formal bail application at the next appearance. They are all facing charges of murder and conspiracy to commit murder. All 4 suspects will remain behind bars until Tuesday next week. Sasha Naidu, SABC News at the Alexandra Magistrates Court.
The Joint Portfolio Committees on Police, Justice and Constitutional Development have adopted their report that sets out how the institution must look into issues of national security. This after the Speaker of the National Assembly, Thoko Didiza, instructed these 2 portfolio committees as well as the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence to consider on an urgent basis allegations by the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi of political interference in the police service at the highest level. Last week, the committees decided that it would recommend to the National Assembly that an ad hoc committee is the best vehicle to look into these matters. Committees were given the deadline of tomorrow to report back to the NA. Co-chairperson Ian Cameron explains.
The ad hoc committee itself will determine its exact terms of reference, as I said earlier, and as confirmed now in terms of legal services. We have given certain guidelines through this report, but the ad hoc committee itself will detail the exact terms of reference and can also request the relevant legal opinions for those terms of reference to be accurate.
Dairy farmers in KwaZulu-Natal say they have been severely impacted by foot and mouth disease and the new restrictions imposed by government to contain the spread. The province has reported 191 outbreaks, with 172 still active. New cases have continued to emerge, with several reported in the Amajuba area, including Denhoza, Newcastle and Emadlangeni local municipalities. CEO of Orange Grove Company, Dave Durham, says the outbreaks have also led to slow trade, especially with international markets suspending imports of South African dairy and livestock products.
Our concerns are that we need a KwaZulu-Natal solution for the foot and mouth that is spreading through our province, and we want to work together with the provincial government of KwaZulu-Natal to come up with the protocols that will work best for all of us in KwaZulu-Natal and don't put our industry and any other industry at risk because we don't share information. So we shared information with the Honourable Minister and her team.
Lanseria Airport west of Johannesburg has reported 2 flight cancellations as Flies Affairs pilot strike enters its second day. The airport's management says the airline has kept it and its passengers informed about developments regarding flight schedules. Trade Union Solidarity has rejected Flies Affairs' 5.7% wage offer and is demanding 10.5% for the 2025-26 financial year. The 2 parties are scheduled for a meeting with the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation and Arbitration tomorrow. Christian Fora is Lanseria CBD executive.
Yes, we've had some impact yesterday especially. We had 3 flights cancelled, but Flight South has kept us informed in the entire process. So they did advise us that there would be some flight cancellations. What happened is that at the last minute, though, some of their contingency plans didn't happen, and we had some passengers that arrived here that needed to be rebooked. Today we only have 2 cancellations, and that's out of 12 to 15 that we do daily with Fly South. So that kept us well informed throughout the process. We've been able to manage it, and actually it's only impacted really our Cape Town flights. Our Durban and George destinations have not been impacted at all.
Recapping the top story, the Gqeberha High Court in the Eastern Cape has dismissed the state application for clarification of facts on the judgment handed by Judge Irma Skuman, acquitting televangelist Timothy Motoso and his co-accused Lusanda Sulani and Zuki Swasito. I am Mondelambana for SFM News Headlines at 11:30.
It's fire, flavour and fierce competition on the Tastemaster SA this Tuesday evening at 7:30 on SABC2. The semi-finals heat up as the final three transform the humble braai into a gourmet three-course showstopper. With Chef Sean Scrooby turning up the pressure, who will flame out and who will sear their place in the grand finale. The Tastemaster SA, Tuesday evenings at 7:30, repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. on SABC2.
SA Sport Awards reflect our collective nation-building spirit. Mzansi's sport heroes and heroines have shown resilience, persistence, passion, discipline, and world-class achievements in the sports fraternity. Nominees will be announced in August. Let us celebrate #IsInJustAGame. Catch the 18th Annual SA Sport Awards on Sunday 24 August at 7:30 p.m. on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, then on SABC 1 at 8 p.m. Brought to you by the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture in partnership with SASCOG and SABC Sport. Celebrating sporting excellence.
Gender-based violence is destroying lives and tearing communities apart. It happens in homes, in schools, at workplaces, and too often in silence. But it doesn't have to continue. If you see it, speak out. If you are hurting, reach out. Because doing nothing is not an option. Listen to all 19 SABC radio stations from Wednesday the 23rd of July for hard talk, discussions, advice, dramas, educational shows and interviews around GBV with experts, survivors, lawmakers and a whole country affected by gender-based violence. All on your favorite SABC radio station. Call 0800 428 428 to report abuse or get help. GBV, it ends with you. This message is brought to you by the SABC. SAFM, in collaboration with the Standard Bank Joy of Jazz, brings you the Jazz for Young People concert happening at the National School of the Arts on the 26th of July 2025. Tune in to Seasons and the soundtrack of your life, broadcasting live. This unique event is a powerful celebration of youth, creativity, and community spirit. Bring the whole family to enjoy a wonderful day of world-class jazz from young musicians, curated by Zoe Mudicha, featuring National School of the Arts Band, Willow Crescent Magnet School of Music Band, Biko's Manor, and many others. Have fun while doing good. Tickets are available at Quicket for just 80 Rand and 50 Rand for kids under 12. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Siskedi, good morning. This is Concrete Epizanera Doubt Emampolwen. I'm very happy about the president's decision to fire Nkabane. And the second point is the way she conducted herself the day she was answering the questions from Portfolio Committee. It was unprofessional, really. It was not sending a message to our youth the way they must conduct themselves. She was embarrassing. Yeah, it seems like she was undermining the portfolio committee as well, because a bit exactly shape is. Just imagine. Thank you, Siskete.
Morning, Kathy. Morning. How are you? Kathy, I'm failing to understand what is it that the South Africans has done to these ANC people. Or maybe they think because they are under ANC, then they own South Africa. Kathy, we're really not happy about the ANC. Everyone is complaining except those who benefit from ANC. So I think Ramaphosa must just leave our country with his ANC, all of them, because it makes us feel like we owe them something. We don't owe ANC nothing. Tabella and Mamelodi, thank you.
Yes, good morning, Kathy. I still believe Ramaphosa is the right person for the job, even though he's surrounded by crooks. Especially now when the country is at this unstable stage. So the challenge is, if it's not Ramaphosa, who else? Because everybody is a crook. At least he's a better crook. He hasn't stolen from us that we know of, other than the dollars. But I think for now, I don't see any better president coming from the ANC as we speak. I don't know if even from other parties. We need to dig deep to get a president.
Good morning, Cathy. I'm making this call out of frustration, really. I think today's the umpteenth time that I've heard people of a certain ethnicity call into the station and call out people by race. Your most recent caller said that colored party. Then earlier this morning, somebody phoned and said that white woman. Now, would it be okay if for me, as a non-black person, called out black people on the radio station? And why is it a colored party? It's a party for everybody. Not that I'm a member of it or defending it in any way, but political parties in South Africa are open to all races. So if a colored person heads up the party, now it's a colored party. So shall we call all the other political parties black parties? I mean, none of this seems to make sense to me. So I really appeal to callers to stop showing their... It's racism when they do that. It's just racism, and they need to stop.
Hi, Cathy. I just want to agree with Don on you specifically, that I also find you very trustworthy, and that your role, I feel, in the country is very critical. I also do worry sometimes about some of your colleagues, but not too much. But I do feel that you're the best of the bunch. And look, I also know that it's been hard for you, and it is hard for you to go through this all the time, because I can tell that you really care. But yeah, please try and keep it up if you can.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
Well, our final conversation for this morning in the 11 o'clock hour is going to focus on the importance of helplines in the fight against gender-based violence. We know that for many women and children who are trapped in abusive homes, a helpline is the first life-saving step toward freedom and some form of safety. There are countless accounts of gender-based violence victims who've detailed how they face stigma when they go and they report violent incidents to police. In this hour, we're going to look at these helplines as not only a first step for victims to be heard, but also how they provide platforms for them to get counseling and even places of safety in some instances. Our next guests work for a national body supporting over 100 shelters that provide refuge for survivors of gender-based violence. They've also launched a crowdfunding campaign on Back a Buddy. This is to keep the National GBV Helpline running. Let me invite onto the show Diane Masawe, who is a member of the board for the National Shelter Movement of South Africa. Diane, good morning to you.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to your listeners.
Tirani Magani is Program Officer at the GBF Response Fund. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to the listeners.
And Claudia Lopez is Human Rights and Gender Justice Program Manager at Heinrich Böll Foundation. Good morning, Claudia.
Hi, good morning.
Firstly, let's look at the work that many helplines do. Often, the existence of helplines is publicized, whether people are listening to radio, watching TV, there'll be an ad that pops up, or even just posters, banners in areas where people are driving past. But often we don't know what the work of these helplines is until we have to engage with them, until you actually pick up the phone, call, and see that this is a number that works. But Diane, maybe just to give us some perspective in terms of how much people rely on helplines and how often they're used.
Thank you so much, Cathy. I think when it comes to helplines, a lot of people make use of the helplines. It is, as you mentioned earlier in your introduction, it's the first step for a lot of people, especially women and children, in terms of accessing assistance in relation to GBV. In terms of our helpline, for instance, we receive on average between 4,000 to almost 6,000 calls per annum. And this is, women and children, predominantly women who are calling from across the provinces, who are calling to ask for assistance. In terms of the assistance people are calling for, sometimes it's just to get information. I'm being abused, or I think I'm in an abusive relationship. What should I do? Others are calling to say, I want to escape. I'm looking for a place of safety. Where can I go? And so it really is a lifeline for people who are looking for information and people who are just trying to get assistance. I think sometimes people also call just to get counseling so that, you've got somebody on the other line or on the other side who is listening to you, who is providing a judgment-free, service, and where you can feel that you are heard and you can be supported.
Tirani, let me come to you and please correct me if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly.
No.
But if we can just maybe talk about what you have seen to be the impact of helplines, especially for somebody who's in distress. What Diane mentions about it being a judgment-free zone, I think is also quite important and perhaps explains why people continue to use helplines.
Thank you, Cathy. I think what we need to remember, or if we can take a step back, it's that as a country, we have a framework in the form of the National Strategic Plan, which is the North Star in terms of what needs to be done. And that document articulates the whole of society approach that we need to follow, because GBV is such a complex problem and no single entity can be able to address that sufficiently. And so, out of the National Strategic Plan, it speaks of the need to prevent violence even before it starts, or even in instances where violence is already taking place. We need to make sure that we stop it where possible. However, because we know that the statistics still tell us that we do have a serious problem as a society, the problem called it the second pandemic during 2020, during COVID. And so we need to make sure that we create ecosystems that sufficiently responds to gender-based violence. So it is important to recognize that helplines don't work in isolation, but they are part of a broader ecosystem that must ensure that survivors of gender-based violence are adequately supported in a trauma-informed way. And so we've seen that through helplines, they actually become that linkage to care, because that's when someone first calls in to a helpline, they get connected to the police. First of all, they get trauma containment because they're in a state of disarray. They may be abandoned in the middle of nowhere. They get linked to the police. The police will then, in a case of sexual violence or rape, the police will then take that survivor to a Tutuzela care center where the survivor gets a one-stop support in terms of the critical services and the essential services that they need, the counseling, the forensic medical examinations, opening of criminal cases, and also the linkage to the long-term support. You may find that survivor doesn't even have anywhere to go. once they leave that Tutuzela Care Center, they may need to go to a shelter. And that's where the role of the civil society organizations come into the picture as well, in ensuring that we just don't offer crisis response, but then that there is actually long-term support that is needed, because that particular survivor still needs to be supported to go to court, for example, and navigating the criminal justice system as they deal with these heinous crimes. Thank you.
And that integration behind the scenes, I mean, it must be really something to manage and to know where to send who at any particular time. Before I bring you in here, Claudia, maybe I just want to go back to Diane and ask you, Diane, the skills that those who are on the other side of the line have, what kind of skills are they given? Because these are no ordinary matters that people are calling in seeking assistance on.
Yes, Cathy. So in terms of the helplines, our helpline is managed by trained social workers who work on a rotational basis. I think it is quite important and quite critical to ensure that people who are providing services are well trained, are well versed in terms of knowledge, policy, procedures, but are also up to date in terms of the referral networks and pathways. But linked to that is also to ensure that people who are doing some of this frontline work, and we always say, gender-based violence is such a heinous crime. The rates, the nature of some of these crimes are just shocking. Is to also ensure that people who are providing these services are also supported, that they themselves are also able to access support in terms of mental health, in terms of their mental well-being. So one of the other things that, we ensure is that, our frontline workers are also supported so that they themselves are also able to debrief, to get counseling, so that they are able to continue to do this work. I think it's quite critical for us to ensure that when it comes to frontline workers, be it, people who are working on the helpline, people who are working in shelters, but even police who are working on some of these issues are also able to access mental health care and are able to be supported, once again, in a judgment-free environment, because these issues are incredibly difficult to deal with. We need to, remember that, people are coming and they're sharing their stories, they're sharing their realities. And, it's things that happen in such a heinous manner that, people are absorbing, and people once again, go back out and assist people. So we really need to ensure that the support, works both ways, that it's multi-directional. And to this end, we need to ensure that we are able to fundraise and to fund for people to be able to access mental health care support.
And Claudia, perhaps what that also raises is the fact that having platforms and tools such as helplines, these are not sort of nice to haves or additional extras, but they become such a crucial point of extending access, and this is people's access to justice, even if it is with just that first step of somebody saying, I need help.
Hello, yes, thank you so much. Actually, as we were talking about this, I was remembering why the helpline was initiated. And that was in December 2020, because as you know, COVID really was the moment where we realized how, we already knew gender-based violence and domestic violence in homes was problematic, but under COVID, the situation was even more dire. And there was great difficulty in trying to support victims or survivors, because access to even going to a police station sometimes was difficult. So there was an absolute need to provide that one-stop sort of platform to be able to support women or survivors of gender-based violence, and refer them onto shelters. So previously there was, people would have to call individual shelters in the different provinces. So this helpline became that one-stop sort of center where you could call and speak to a social worker who would know exactly where the vacancies are in shelters across all 9 provinces, which is always something that was very difficult. And the shelters not only, the helplines not only accessed by victims or survivors, but also by a lot of civil society organizations and domestic violence organizations trying to help women. Even the police could access it. So this platform has provided a really fantastic resource. And the helpline also works with the National Department of Social Development's GBV Command Center. So it shows you also the importance of partnership between, different helplines, different forms of organizations working towards the same goal.
What are some of the parameters, Claudia, within which you're able to do your work? Because yes, you can counsel clients and perhaps even give them advice on what they need to do, but you obviously can't force the client.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I am from the Heinrich Böll Foundation, so we're just taking a little bit back here. We are a funder that supports organizations doing vital, important work like this. But before I became a program manager at the Heinrich Böll, I did one-on-one counseling. Providing victim support is part of my kind of core training. And I worked for many years doing that. And you definitely can't force women to access help. You can provide guidance, advice, encouragement, but you can't force, because it's only when she's ready to do it. And sometimes they just want temporary reprieve from the situation. But also it's so important also to never cut it off, right? Just say, I can't force you to access any sort of help, but I am here if you change your mind, if situations change, if things get more dire. And sometimes it is just about testing that relationship also. Can I trust this person? Being, the victim or survivor, trusting the counselor to keep, the best interests in regard. So definitely can never force it. It has to be the victim's choice and desire to do that. And sometimes often, women, or I keep saying women, sorry, because they are majoritively the victims, they do return to abusive partners. I mean, domestic violence, for example, is very complex.
Yeah.
And they do return. And it's imperative that, we recognize the cycle of abuse. And we recognize that this is very difficult, yeah.
We're going to continue with the conversation shortly. It's time for your 11:30 news headlines.
Thank you, Cathy. On the news headlines, the NPA says it plans to oppose the bail applications in the case of 4 men linked to the murder of Oba John Safoga, more popularly known as DJ Somebody. 4 men were arrested in Gauteng yesterday afternoon. Safoga was killed in a hail of bullets in Woodmid in November 2022. The Gqeberha High Court in the Eastern Cape has dismissed the state application for clarification of facts on the judgment handed by Judge Irma Skuman acquitting televangelist Timothy Motoso and his co-accused Lusanda Sulani and Zukiswa Sito. And 2 golden Air buses have been set alight in Governberg Road in Nyanga in Cape Town in separate incidents yesterday and this morning. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
My name is Regina Mohlahlana, midfielder. Banyana, we are the African champions. My favorite hairstyle is short haircut. Between a farmhouse and a beach house, I will choose a farmhouse. If I receive a 5 million rent secretly, I will share with the team. Fellow South African, continue showing Banyana love and support them all the way. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects.
Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. When they walk on the pitch, both teams will believe they will triumph, but reality kicks in during 90 minutes of action. Who will dance to victory between UJ ladies and First Touch ladies? This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Witness Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. UJ Ladies versus First Touch Ladies on Sunday 27 July at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Also available on SABC radio stations at 3 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Hear the rhythm, feel the heat at the Imbaula Music Festival in partnership with SAFM, where music, culture and community come alive. Join us on the 2nd of August 2025 at Pretoria Botanical Gardens from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. to vibe to Sanal musician Calvin Momo, Amanda Black, Zing Lumalo, Trompis and many more. More than just music. Share stories, spark change, and unite against gender-based violence. Grab your tickets at imbaula.co.za. Brought to you by SAFM and SABC 1. Hear the rhythm, feel the heat. Imbaula.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
Well, we continue the conversation on the talking point, and we're focusing on helplines as important tools and platforms of access when it comes to the fight against gender-based violence and also offering support for survivors of this violence. Joining us on the line, Diane Masawe is a member of the board for the National Shelter Movement of South Africa. Tikhani Magani is program officer at the GBF Response Fund, and Claudia Lopez is a human rights and gender justice program manager at Heinrich Böll Foundation. So, Diane, then let me bring this conversation back to you, and we talk about the survival of the helpline and what it takes to keep these helplines going.
Thank you so much, Cathy. I think maybe just to take us a step back is to note that, in South Africa, as a country, we've got wonderful legislation and policy. So, we've got policies that aim to prevent and to support survivors of violence. I think a key challenge is that a lot of our strategic documents, our plans, our policies, our acts are not adequately funded. So this then brings us to your question around the helpline. I mean, to run a helpline is a huge resource. There's infrastructure to ensure, one, that the lines are fully operational, that service providers are accessible, and like our lines are able to run 24 hours a day because it's a 24-hour toll-free line. That one, it's also toll-free, which means that callers are not incurring any cost. Because we know sometimes that the cost to access services is actually a hindrance for people to be able to access some of these services, be it a cost, to make a phone call, a cost to get to a shelter, the cost associated to getting to a police station so that one is able to report the crime, the cost of transport to get to a clinic or a hospital, depending on where you are, so that you're able to seek services. So the helpline is a toll-free line, and that means that the organization is the one that's carrying the cost. It's not a cost that's put on callers. There's the cost to ensure that information is flowing freely. So are we able to call provinces, call shelters, ensure that we're able to get information, so there's a lot of costs that are associated with running a helpline. The reality is that at the moment, we're also at a time where funding is a challenge. We've seen funding cuts. We've seen that even when it comes to, and here I'll give an example of, Gauteng DSD, for instance. A lot of, shelters in the province, do try to access funding from DSD. And a lot of times, either, the funding requests are denied, or you find that even when funding is given, it's not adequate or enough funding to ensure that these services are running 24 hours a day. And yet we see that in the 2023-2024 2025 financial year, there was monies that Gauteng DSD gave back. So right now, for us to be able to provide the services, we do need funding. So one of the things that we are doing is, a back a buddy campaign where we asking, society, we're asking any individual to say, can you donate funding? Because, gender-based violence is an issue that impacts and affects all of us. Whether it's a 5 rand you can give, a 10 rand, or however you're able to donate, these are critical resources that will assist us to ensure that the helpline continues running.
Tirani, the work then that you do, and if we're to look at once somebody has called in and this is somebody who needs a reprieve, as we heard earlier, and you need to send them to a shelter where they know they can be safe for whatever period they might need to access those services. Speak to me again about what it takes to administer that behind the scenes.
Thank you, Cathy. So perhaps just to clarify that because we are a fund, we are not an implementing agency. However, we are a partner to organizations that implement. So we were commissioned in 2021 by the president, and we are a private sector-led fund, meaning the bulk of the resources that we have come from Corporate South Africa, and with the main aim of mobilizing resources from the private sector to ensure that the private sector has a role in and contribute towards addressing gender-based violence in the country. Since our inception, we have been able to run 2 calls of proposals and have partnered with over 300 organizations in the country, and 200 million rands has been invested towards that process. So meaning, as just one of the stakeholders that are doing their best really to ensure that survivors are not left stranded, and that organizations that are working at the local level are resourced adequately to ensure that they're able to respond to these issues. And I'm talking about, again, organizations that are ensuring that in instances where gender-based violence is already taking place, it gets stopped, or where it's already occurring, we make sure that through these organizations, the adequate shelters. There are some that are running helplines, like your rape crisis, Childline, Lifeline. Those are some of our partners, and we know that they are playing a critical role in plugging in the gaps, because we are dealing with such a problem of this magnitude, and it requires a lot of resources to be pulled together in order for us to respond adequately. But again, like I said, what we see our organizations are doing is that partner organizations that what they are doing, it's coming in really to plug in that critical gap. We've seen that organizations that are working at the local level, they are the first ones to arrive on the scene, or they are the last ones to leave, and ensuring that there is that long-term support, and that the kind of support that gets provided is not once off, but they walk the journey depending on the needs of the survivor. And I heard you ask a question earlier saying, what do you do? Can you really force a survivor to report, to step forward? What we've seen through the work that we're doing in partnership with community-based organizations is that people who have been violated sometime in the past can even step forward later to say, I'm now ready to go through counseling. I'm now ready to talk about what actually happened to me. So ensuring that organizations that are working at the community level are robust, they are solid, they have got the resources that they need to keep their doors open is very critical.
All right. Thanks for that contribution. Let me bring in some of our listeners on the voice note line.
Good morning, I was Cathy and your panel of guests. With regards to the topic in discussion, I just feel like, with regards to GBV and the helpline that they're speaking on, I feel like how practical has it been? Because it's all well said when you're saying it in theory, but how practical has it been when you say things of the nature, when you say, no, the police can be called through the helpline? There are certain places in the country that, where the police don't even go there because there's no vans and all of these kind of excuses. Like, how practical has it been? That's the question. Daniel here in Bryanston.
Good morning, Cathy, and your beautiful guest. What a topic about gender-based violence. It's a difficult topic when we talk about the police because they are not trained on the issues or to deal with emotions. Cathy, the other thing is that how do we deal with the message? How do you spread the message across the country, across the township in South Africa? Because the formality that we try to send the message on the media, our telenovelas, or in the sporting world, it doesn't work to the people because some of the influencers are abusers themselves. Some of the influencers have been abused, but they don't talk about it. Pranma by Protectland. Thanks for the great show.
Diane, do you want to tackle that?
Yes, I think firstly, thank you for the two questions. I think in terms of the practicalities, I think it's important for us to note that, yes, I think, in some places, police are not able to respond for a various number of reasons. I think the one we normally hear is there is no transport, like there are no vans. We also know that different areas have got different capacities when it comes to their police station.
All right. Oh, that's what happened. I think we've lost our guest there. Oh, man. Okay. We were joining, we were having that conversation via Zoom. And not being mindful of the time. The screen is far away from where I'm sitting, so it looks like that session has timed out. Okay, well, I guess it brings us closer to what would have been the end of the show. I'm so sorry that we have to end things in such a tardy fashion, really. I do apologize for that. The show will be back with you again tomorrow between 9 and midday. Have yourselves a wonderful afternoon. Up next is the book reading.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation.
SFM's award-winning drama department presents another episode of the book, A Testament of Hope, the autobiography of Dr. Sam Motswenyane. Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised.
It was only when Dr. Andries Treenach, then Deputy Minister of Bantu Affairs, was asked to pass a vote of thanks that I realized how much more remained to be done to change the attitude and entrenched policy of the apartheid government. Dr. Treenach expressed astonishment that the delegates had applauded me after what I had said, which was contrary and altogether in conflict with the government's policy framework at that time. Dr. Treenach argued that the government's policy did actually provide enough scope for black business development in the homeland areas, and that if greater business participation was allowed in the urban areas, the blacks would logically also demand to be granted extended political rights in these areas. This, he said, was contrary to the then existing government policy of separate development. Mr. Stockenstrom, when accompanying me to my hotel room, assured me that although Dr. Treenach apparently differed with my views, South Africa would not be the same again, as I also happened to be the first black to be invited to address a conference of the AHI. I do not know how many of the delegates agreed with Dr. Treenach, but starting from that time, communications and relations between NAFCOC and the Afrikaanse Handels Instituut improved quite significantly. It became normal practice for members of these organizations to be invited to each other's conferences. From 1977 onwards, one can say that there was a significant change in relations, starting with the business organizations and followed by the government gradually opening the channels of communication. when the international economic sanctions that were imposed on South Africa started to have serious effects on the country's economy and economic growth was reduced to zero, concerned white business leaders in the country started putting together groups of representatives or missions to go abroad and talk to countries that were responsible for the imposition of sanctions. The United States, Britain, France, Germany, and the Scandinavian countries were all supporting sanctions against South Africa. The missions visited these countries to negotiate for a change of heart by the governments and to convince them that things were beginning to change for the better in South Africa. NAVCOG was invited to join these missions, but the organization took the position that it could not be involved in promoting South Africa until certain basic conditions were met. These conditions included A, the release of Mr. Mandela from prison, the drastic change of the apartheid system, the representation of black people in parliament, and the lifting of restrictions on black business. We knew that all these demands would not be met immediately, but we refused to participate in promoting South Africa because we felt that the country's policies were unmarketable at that time. It was not as if we were benefiting from the sanctions. On the contrary, all the business people and all people in the country had to bear the brunt of the sanctions. While we also suffered as an organization, we were committed to the principles of freedom. I believe that as a result of our refusal to be part of these overseas missions, big business did not consider us to be a valuable partner. It encouraged a breakaway from NAVCOG. Other business people who saw things differently were encouraged to create another organization. It was around this time that FABCOS was formed with the support of big business in the country. I believe the major aim there was to create a counterpart to NAVCOG that would be more agreeable with the thinking of big business in South Africa. We tried very hard to bridge the gap between ourselves and FABCOS, but largely because of the support that FABCOS was getting from big business, we just could not succeed in dissuading them from their course of action. I remember that one big company that had one of its members serving on a NAVCOG subcommittee was in fact also deeply involved in the creation of FABCOS. At the end of the 13th conference held in Belleville, the Inyanda Chamber of Commerce proposed that the 14th annual conference of NAVCOG be held in Durban in 1978. The conference took place at the Elangeni Hotel, where our delegates were also accommodated. At the conference, we were privileged to have as one of the speakers Mr. Harry Oppenheimer, chairman of the Anglo-American Corporation, who spoke emphatically about the changes that needed to be made in the economy of our country. He, of course, represented big business, but the delegates were pleased to have Mr. Oppenheimer as a speaker at our conference because there was a narrowing of the gap in relations between NAVCOG and big business at the time. Also present at the conference was Mr. Raymond Ackerman, the chairman of Pick n Pay, who was expecting the conference to fully support his proposal of establishing a partnership with Black Chain. It was at this conference where the proposal, after considerable discussion, was rejected. The fear in having a partnership with a white...
A humongous rivalry in African women's football is back on the battlefield. The Super Falcons are highly confident they will keep their hopes of the 10th title alive. However, Banyana Banyana have a mammoth task to silence the green and white. This is the semi-final contest of the Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024. 9-time African champions Nigeria versus reigning champions South Africa this Tuesday 22 July at 5:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus, SABC 3 and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC radio stations at 6 p.m. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
With the ever-changing financial landscape, it can be difficult to make sense of all the moves at times. Join me, Jimmy Moyaha, on the SAFM Market Update with MoneyWeb, Mondays to Thursdays, 6 to 7 p.m, as we break down the key market trends, top financial stories, and smart investment insights, all in one place. It's everything you need to stay financially informed and ahead of the curve.
This Mandela Month, Nelson Mandela once said,
"We have traveled a long journey. We have fought for peace and reconciliation, for social justice, for all men, women, and children."
SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
We had Professor Flonway Coles from Nashville University, who represented the Booker T. Washington Foundation. He was given the opportunity to address the conference on the experiences of black business in the United States. To a very great extent, we found that the problems and racial impediments that black Americans experienced were similar to those that we were experiencing in South Africa. We considered that some of the solutions that were used there would be quite suitable for our organization to look at. The 15th Annual Conference in 1979 was hosted by the Johannesburg African Chamber of Commerce. The conference was held at the Carlton Hotel, which was the biggest hotel in Johannesburg. This was a very successful conference with delegates including people from Zimbabwe. Mr. Hosea Mapondera, a very prominent businessman from Zimbabwe, addressed the conference. He stated that the Limpopo River that divides our countries should never serve as a barrier to communication between Zimbabweans and South Africans, adding that our problems were similar. We roundly applauded him for a very brave and thought-provoking speech. During 1979, as chairman of the recently established African Bank, I was offered a training opportunity by the Chase Manhattan Bank in New York. The opportunity enabled me to spend 3 months with the bank studying its operations at various levels. The aim was to give me some practical exposure to the banking industry in order to return home a better informed chairman of the African Bank. I benefited immensely from the exposure and the training received from the Chase Manhattan Bank of New York. At the end of my training, I was able to bring my wife to New York so that she could also experience a little of life in that city. Do recall that she had also been with me in the 1960s when I first visited the United States. My wife was extremely happy to spend a few days with me in New York at the end of my training. Also in 1979, as president of NAFCOC, I received an invitation to address the conference of the United Kingdom South African Trade Association, UCSATA, an organization of business people based in London, which was created to bolster trade between the two countries. UCSATA members were happy to receive a black business point of view on the situation in our country. When I returned from New York in 1979, I found that the Urban Foundation, which had been established 2 years earlier, had arranged a conference of business people with President Botha to be held at the Carlton Hotel. I was privileged to be asked to speak at the conference where Mr. Botha had to listen to us and hear the voice of the business people of South Africa, both black and white. I represented the black business point of view. In my speech, I highlighted the problems and impediments confronting black business in South Africa, citing as priorities the need for the removal of restrictions on black business development, the need for facilitating the funding of black business in the country, and the need for a speedy change to those policies which made it absolutely impossible for blacks to contribute towards the growth of the economy of the country outside the seventh role. At the end of the conference, Dr. Anton Rupert was nominated to investigate the feasibility of the establishment of a funding institution for the development of black business in the country. This institution came into being in 1980 and was called the Small Business Development Corporation, SBDC. The SBDC was established specifically to cater for the funding and development of black business in the country. Big business was joined by government to work as partners in providing the necessary funds for the capitalization of that institution. I, together with a number of other black business persons, was elected to serve on the board of the SBDC, which still exists under the name Business Partners South Africa.
That was another episode of the book, A Testament of Hope, the autobiography of Dr. Sam Mohlahlana. The book is available online on www.kmmr.co.za, KMMR Publishers, and in all leading bookstores countrywide. It is broadcast on SAFM at 11:45 Monday to Thursday on The Talking Point. It is produced for the station by Vovi Patala, read by Samson Kumalo. Technical production, Wiseman Manele, Nanda Koza, and Tato Mapuruma.
Gender-based violence is destroying lives and tearing communities apart. It happens in homes, in schools, at workplaces, and too often in silence. But it doesn't have to continue. If you see it, speak out. If you are hurting, reach out. Because doing nothing is not an option. Listen to all 19 SABC radio stations from Wednesday, the 23rd of July for hard talk, discussions, advice, dramas, educational shows, and interviews around GBV with experts, survivors, lawmakers, and a whole country affected by gender-based violence. All on your favorite SABC radio station. Call 0800 428 428 to report abuse or get help. GBV, it ends with you. This message is brought to you by the SABC.
12 o'clock on Tuesday, the 22nd of July, 2025. A very warm welcome to Updated Noon here on SAFM. Leading the conversation, I'm Sakina Kamwendo, and coming up in the next hour...
We now know that the same firearm that killed Aman Swart is the same firearm that killed DJ Somebody and his two bodyguards.
The Alexandra Magistrates Court has postponed the case against 4 men accused of murdering DJ Somebody.
President Ramaphosa informed Advocate Chauk of his decision in writing and indicated that the President and the public will benefit from an independent assessment of issues.
And the South Gauteng Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Andrew Chauke, has been suspended pending an inquiry into his fitness to hold office. I'm so much happier when he's here.
I'm back for the Banyana game. Banyana against Nigeria.
Yeah. Underdogs. We're the underdogs. We're defending champions, but we're underdogs.
And 25 days till the Springboks take on Australia. Rassie Erasmus says experimentation is over.
All right. John Kiriker back with that and details of those stories and more in the second half of the show. In the meantime, let us know what's on your mind. 41391, that's the SMS line number. You'll be charged R150 per SMS. You can also get in touch via X, our handle at SABC News_radio, or you can send us a WhatsApp voice note on 082-692-3909. Well, these and more stories coming your way on this Tuesday edition of Updated Noon. First, though, the latest news with Ondelambana.
Thank you, Sakina. On the top stories, NPA to oppose bail application in DJ Somebody murder case and 2 flights of air flight cancellations at Lanseria Airport. For SAFM News, I am Ondelambana, and a very good day. The NPA says it plans to oppose the bail applications in the case of 4 men linked to the murder of Opa John Safoka, more popularly known as DJ Somebody, 4 men were arrested in Gauteng yesterday afternoon. Safoka was killed in a hail of bullets in Woodmead in November 2022. 2 other people were also killed in the same incident after the accused's first appearance at the Alexandra Magistrates Court north of Johannesburg this morning. The case has been postponed to next Tuesday. NPA spokesperson Pindim Jonondwane has outlined some of the charges they face.
There were 2 separate matters. One that concerns the murder of DJ Somebody and 2 other people. There we had 4 accused persons appearing in court, facing charges, amongst others, 3 counts of murder, 2 of possession of firearm, and the other of possession of ammunition. So that matter has been postponed to Tuesday the 29th, as one of the accused indicated that they wish to bring a formal bail application before court. Indeed, as a state, we will be opposing his release on bail. They are before court facing very serious offences.
The NPA says it will take its quest to appeal the acquittal of televangelist Timothy Mutosho to the Supreme Court of Appeal, but before doing that, it will send questions of law to Judge Irma Skuman for reservations. The state was dealt another blow today when its application for clarification of facts on the Mutosho judgment was dismissed by the Gqeberha High Court in the Eastern Cape. Omotosho and his co-accused Lusanda Sulani and Zuki Swasito were facing a string of charges which included racketeering, human trafficking and rape, but were acquitted on all the charges in April in a judgment delivered by Judge Irma Skuman. NPA spokesperson Mthunzi Maga says they will file their application to the Supreme Court of Appeal within 21 days. The state in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial has placed on record its observations from the inspection in Loco held earlier this month. The High Court in Pretoria convened a special sitting on July 4th, moving proceedings to Vosloorus on Gauteng's East Rand, one of sites where accused number 1, Muzi Sibiya, claims he was assaulted by police. Sibiya and 4 others are on trial for the 2014 murder of Bafana captain Senzo Meyiwa, who was shot and killed at the home of his singer Kelly Kumalo's mother in Vosloorus. The inspection followed conflicting claims between Sibiya and lead investigator Brigadier Bongani Gininda. Sibiya alleges he was taken to municipal offices near the local police station where he was assaulted, a claim Gininda denies. State prosecutor George Baloyi detailed his observations to the court.
Accused number 1 says he was made to sit at a spot at the back of the parking area, which is in front of the offices. He was handcuffed from behind and a plastic bag was put on his face. He mentioned that Brigadier Gininda appeared and the other police officers who were with him moved to the parked motor vehicles and held a meeting. He mentioned that the municipality area is known as a gold spot and the police station is behind those premises, and that he has passed by that place previously and is familiar with the surroundings.
2 Golden Arrow buses have been set alight in Govan Mbeki Road in Nyaga in Cape Town in separate incidents yesterday and this morning. Police spokesperson Wesley Twig says they have registered a malicious damage to property case. Twig says the motive for the incidents is still unknown and the assailants are yet to be arrested. He says the police and law enforcement will remain in the area to monitor the situation. The Western Cape Minister of Cultural Affairs and Sport, Ricardo Mackenzie, says arrangements are being finalized to bring the group of stranded soccer players back home by Thursday. Mackenzie is assessing the situation in Portugal. The group left the city earlier this month to take part in a football tournament in Spain. They've since been left stranded after the BT Football Academy allegedly failed to pay for return flights and accommodation. The group of more than 20 players is currently staying in a hotel in Lisbon. Mackenzie says the provincial government decided to step in because the children's well-being comes first.
I just came back from a run with the boys. I saw the kids. They're all in good spirits and happy to get home. I thank you, Tracy Lang, Abokile, and all the stakeholders that have been working extremely hard in raising funds to get these kids home safely. All arrangements has been made, all flights has been booked, and in 3 different groups, all these kids should arrive in South Africa, Cape Town, by Thursday. Thanks to everyone who's been working hard to ensure the safety of these kids to the Western Cape and to South Africa.
Lanseria Airport west of Johannesburg has reported 2 flight cancellations as FlySafair's pilot strike enters a second day. The airport's management says the airline has kept it and its passengers informed about developments regarding flight schedules. Trade Union Solidarity has rejected FlySafair's 5.7% wage offer and is demanding 10.5% for the 2025 financial year. Christian Forer is Lanseria CBD executive.
Yes, we've had some impact yesterday especially. We had 3 flights cancelled, but FlySafair has kept us informed in the entire process. So they did advise us that there would be some flight cancellations. What happened is that at the last minute, though, some of their contingency plans didn't happen, and we had some passengers that arrived here that needed to be rebooked. Today we only have 2 cancellations, and that's out of 12 to 15 that we do daily with FlySafair. So that kept us well informed throughout the process. We've been able to manage it, and actually it's only impacted really our Cape Town flights. Our Durban and George destinations have not been impacted at all.
Recapping the top story, the NPA says it plans to oppose the bail applications in the case of 4 men linked to the murder of Opa John Safoga, more popularly known as DJ Somebody. I'm Mondilambana for SFM News Headlines at 12:30.
Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo, midday to 1 p.m. Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo.
Thanks so much, Ondela. Good afternoon, everybody. It is 10 minutes after 12. Thanks so much for tuning in to Update at Noon. A quick look at our diary. Portfolio Committee on Police. Well, they've been meeting this morning, and the Committee on Justice and Constitutional Development are also in that meeting. And this is to consider a draft report on the request to consider allegations made by the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Commissioner Nhlanhla Nkwanasi, and also to do an assessment about the appropriate approach and, of course, submit recommendations to the National Assembly regarding all of this. And then the 4 suspects arrested in connection with the fatal shooting of musician and businessman Opa Safoka, popularly known as DJ Somebody, they appeared in court, and we'll have Sasha Naidu tell us more about what came out of that. And then President Ramaphosa last night issuing statements, firstly with regard to a reshuffle, and that is in the higher education portfolio, and then also suspending the South Gauteng NPA head advocate Andrew Chauke pending an inquiry into his fitness to hold office. So we'll try and get some analysis on that matter and some of the others as well. And then FlySafair, they have decided to participate in a mediation process with its pilots. The airline locked out today after the workers threatened to go on strike over discontent with wage agreements and on negotiations, I should say, and conditions. And of course, you heard yesterday exactly what was going on there. So we're keeping an eye on what's happening there. And then Lesotho, they claim that there are illegal military training camps on South African farms. Now, they say that security chiefs say that youth are being lured by a group to fight for the return of territories to Lesotho. We'll find out from our correspondent in the Mountain Kingdom what the latest is and what they know from that perspective. And also the South African Federation of Trade Unions at SAFTU and 40 other civil society organizations, they are set to protest outside NEDLAC over the proposed labour law amendments. And then we're also watching the interview panel chaired by the Chief Justice interviewing candidates who are vying to be IEC commissioners. We heard a bit from there yesterday, so that continues today. And a few other stories as well. You'll remember that story yesterday about the soccer team or the squad that went over to Europe and was stranded. 28, Ms. Williams told us, were still stranded in Europe. But then there was an indication that enough money had been raised, everybody's taken care of, they will be making their way home. Well, the Western Cape Minister of Cultural Affairs and Sport, Ricardo Mackenzie, we understand is now travelling to Portugal to assess the situation regarding the group of stranded young soccer players from Cape Town. And this has elicited quite an interesting debate and a conversation on social media platforms where some have indicated that they feel that perhaps the Western Cape government is trying to take the glory for something that they didn't quite do. So, as I say, you could go and have a look there on the social media platforms and see what's happening there. But that's the latest development on that story. And then quite a few other court stories that will also bring you up to speed on.
The Atlas Lionesses want to capitalize on home ground advantage and secure tickets to the final. But the Black Queens want to be remembered for spoiling the party for the host nation. This is the semi-final contest of the Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024. Catch the big clash between the North and the West. Morocco versus Ghana. This Tuesday, 22 July at 8:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC 3 at 9 p.m. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Gender-based violence is destroying lives and tearing communities apart. It happens in homes, in schools, at workplaces, and too often in silence. But it doesn't have to continue. If you see it, speak out. If you are hurting, reach out. Because doing nothing is not an option. Listen to all 19 SABC radio stations from Wednesday, the 23rd of July for hard talk, discussions, advice, dramas, educational shows and interviews around GBV with experts, survivors, lawmakers and a whole country affected by gender-based violence. All on your favorite SABC radio station. Call 0800 428 428 to report abuse or get help. GBV, it ends with you. This message is brought to you by the SABC.
Update at noon, midday to 1 p.m.
Now, members of the Joint Portfolio Committees on Police, Justice and Constitutional Development have expressed concern over how rushed the process of adopting a report which sets out guidelines on how Parliament will look into allegations that were made by the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. The committees have since adopted the report despite various objections and points of clarity. EFF's Member of Parliament Leanne Matthys says that the committees need to tread carefully moving forward.
I do share the sentiments that it seems that this is very rushed. Literally, it seems that, well, it not seems, but an hour and a half was allocated for something that really it shouldn't have had a time of an hour and a half. And now we are rushed to give our input outside of the fact that the meeting started earlier, and that's not neither here or there. But even here at this point, everything is just rushed. There was no response regarding why, because when we closed the meeting last week, there were two things. It was the report, and we said that in the next meeting, we're going to go through the motion. So my understanding is that it's not the actual ad hoc committee that does the terms of reference. We need to have a motion that needs to be presented in the National Assembly. So we need guidance on when is this motion going to be presented, because Parliament is going into recess. I think tomorrow is the last sitting. So is the Speaker going to convene a special plenary for us to present the motion and the motion be presented? It needs to be, and part of the motion will include the establishment of the ad hoc committee. Well, the motion is rather the establishment of the ad hoc committee with the terms of reference that needs to be decided. And obviously, once the ad hoc committee that is adopted in the National Assembly, then the committee meets and then they add on and they do all the other necessary things in terms of the terms of reference they have received from the National Assembly. So I'm getting a very different, or what you said was that the ad hoc committee will determine the terms of reference, but no, that thing has to be determined in the motion. So we need to have discussions about who's going to present the motion and whose name is it going to be in, because those were things we discussed very clearly in our last meetings.
That was the EFF's Member of Parliament Leanne Matthys. Meanwhile, the Umkhonto we Sizwe Party's Davis Kosana reiterated that despite the Judicial Committee of Inquiry set up by President Cyril Ramaphosa and investigations of the Office of the Public's Protector, Parliament should also continue with its work into the issue.
We won't tell what the executive should do, but that executive as well accounts to us. it accounts to members of parliament. It doesn't give them any right to do as they please, and that we are only spectators. We can't be spectators when we are sent to parliament to represent our people. We need to make sure that they account. They cannot hide, behind the issue of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry, which has no legal binding at any cost. In fact, as we said, it's a waste of money as well of us going that route. But because of some members believe that it will help, and as well we can't do anything because the president has decided to do that. But history will repeat itself. History will repeat itself. It's not biting. It's not going to give us anything which we can't do. But be that as it may, let's go on this matter. But they must know that at the end of the day, we are all members of parliament, and they have to account to parliament.
And that was the Umkhonto weSizwe Party's Member of Parliament, Davis Kosana. And for more on today's proceedings, let's speak now to our reporter in Parliament, Zaline Merrington. Zaline, good afternoon. So in terms of what happened today, let's start with a confirmation if indeed the report of the committees has been adopted.
Good afternoon, Sakina. Yes, that is basically what the committee, the two committees came together for this morning to discuss their report and obviously to adopt it. They will now, the next step would be to table this report. Remember their deadline to report back to the National Assembly is the 23rd, which is tomorrow. So the joint committees will table this, their report to the National Assembly tomorrow.
Zaline, what are some of the other interesting points of either clarity or objection that was raised by any of the members in the committee?
A big issue, Sakina, even last week, was that there were members who were very unhappy, in particular from MK, Action SA, and also the EFF, who were questioning why this joint committee only consisted of the
All right, Zaline.
Whereas,
sorry, we lost you there. You were saying they were questioning why the committee was only made up of. That's where we lost you.
Apologies, Sakina. They were not happy with the fact that it was only the police and Justice and Constitutional Development committees, whereas the Speaker had given an instruction for 3 committees. In other words, also the Intelligence Committee, the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence that must be part of, direction to these 3 committees as to how the issue of national security should be addressed. The answer to that from Ian Cameron, who was a co-chairperson, said that the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence is not a committee that is open to the public. They have always, discussed issues behind closed doors, and that is why they weren't part of this joint meeting. Another issue, the MK party today weren't happy with how the report was put together. They said that there were too many details outstanding, including this issue of why joint standing on intelligence was not part of their meetings. So they did not, Mzonele Manyi was saying that they would not support this report. But what will happen, Sakina, is that once the National Assembly adopted this report and the motion goes through that an ad hoc committee must be established, that ad hoc committee will determine its terms of reference, among others, its scope, the duration of how long they must be busy with this work, because another point that MK was making was that This is a matter of national urgency as well. So why are we looking at a starting date for the ad hoc committee of the 1st of September only? And then also another issue, Sakina, just lastly, is that the members who will serve on this ad hoc committee, they will also be determined by the ad hoc committee itself.
And then, Zaline, in terms of the next steps to follow, considering I think it was mentioned there by Leanne Matthys of the EFF that Parliament will be going into recess soon. What next?
Sakina, so as I said, the report will be in the National Assembly tomorrow, and then of course I think it's almost a recess period of about a month. And then this ad hoc committee will most likely be established after that recess, and they are likely to start on the 1st of September only with the work of the ad hoc committee.
All right. Zaline, thank you so much. Our reporter in Parliament, Zaline Merrington, was watching that for us. Meanwhile, earlier in the week, EFF leader Julius Malema announced that the party would consider taking President Cyril Ramaphosa's decision to the Constitutional Court to declare him as well a constitutional delinquent for appointing acting police minister Professor Firoz Kachalia. This is what Malema had to say.
Or the president either appoint a minister or dismisses a minister. He's got two options only. So what he did is to take chances with us. And we have since this morning sent him a letter to tell him that what he did of putting Senzo on a special leave is unconstitutional. And appointing Kachalia as an acting minister of police is also unconstitutional. If there is a need for an acting minister, you choose from amongst the ministers who are sitting in cabinet. You don't go outside a cabinet or even in parliament to pick up a person to come and act. He says he's got a right to choose two ministers from outside. That we agree with him. But he has got no right to choose an acting minister from outside. So on those 2 points, we're going to take the president head on, and we're going to go to the Constitutional Court to declare him as a constitutional delinquent who has got no regard and respect for the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. He can't do willy-nilly things here with our Constitution. There is very serious allegations against Senzo Mkhulu, and those allegations are such that the president saw a need to establish a commission, which is unnecessary. The police should be arresting as we speak now. Once Mkhwanazi said he's got evidence against the minister and all the players, the police were supposed to immediately arrest those people, and we deal with people who are before court. Why should we subject criminals to commissions? The commission, if you did political science, they teach you that if you want to delay something or you want people to get tired of it, you just do a commission to prolong that issue. By the time people realize, they don't even know what that commission is about, because you don't want to take an action. So he's going to be forced to take an action. What he did is unconstitutional.
And our apologies for that music. I'm not sure if you could hear it. We certainly could in studio. Apologies for that. And then that was, of course, EFF leader Julius Malema. But for in-depth analysis into this particular matter, we join now by legal analyst advocate Zweletu Madasa. Advocate, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Update at Noon.
Thank you very much.
Advocate Madasa, overall, what is your observation and analysis of how this whole saga has unfolded from the time that Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi had that briefing to how it's been handled from the side of the presidency and Parliament?
No, thank you very much. I think to put a preamble to this saga is to say, the president, I think, his wounds are really self-inflicted because of his long inaction on the matter of the Zondo. Remember, he campaigned on that subject. That was
Advocate Madasa, my apologies. That signal seems to be breaking up there. So I'm not sure if you are able to perhaps move around, if we can see if we can establish a better connection there. Our apologies for that. But of course, let's just try again and see if we have better luck. And speaking to Advocate Zweletu Madasa and just talking about what we've heard, what has been said, how Parliament has decided to proceed on this matter. The presidency, of course, making known the decision to appoint Professor Firoz Kachalia. He'll take up the position of acting police minister from the 1st of August, and that while the minister, Senzo Mkunu, is on special leave. So all of this we're hoping to unpack with Advocate Madasa. But let's take a quick break.
This July, journey beyond the horizon with Chasing the Sun. 5 mesmerizing episodes every Sunday at 7:30 on SABC2 from 13 July to 10 August. Feel the thrill of the adventure, the power of discovery, and stories that light up the skies. Missed an episode? No worries. Stream anytime, anywhere on SABC Plus. No subscription required. Chasing the Sun. Your Sunday nights just got brighter. Tune in to SABC2, Sundays at 7:30 or watch on SABC Plus on demand.
For the love of the game. Hey, halala, halala, halala. Hey, halala, South Africa.
My name is Fikile Makama. I'm from Cape Town and I'm a defender. Between city life and village life, I will choose village life. I like being around people. I would like to say to my friends back home, they know where I come from. They've seen my struggles. So me being here is me representing them and my family. We are the champions. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects.
Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Well, it's just a few seconds before the bottom of the hour, so we'll get back to Advocate Zweletu Madasa and just get some analysis on what's been happening. But I think let's rather just quickly get the news headlines from Ondelambana, and then we'll proceed to pick up that interview with Advocate Madasa. And, of course, talking about how Parliament and, of course, the President has handled this matter regarding what Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi had to say during that now famous press briefing a few Sundays ago. But as I said, it is 12:30 right now. Let's get the latest headlines from Ondelambana.
Thank you, Sakina. On the news headlines, the NPA in Gauteng has confirmed that businessman Katiso Molefe, the alleged mastermind of the murder of Opa John Safuga, also known as DJ Somebody, will be the only accused applying for bail at the Alexandra Magistrates Court next week. The NPA says it will take its quest to appeal the acquittal of televangelist Timothy Motoso to the Supreme Court of Appeal, but before doing that, it will send questions of law to Judge Irma Skuman for reservations. And the British government has announced a new sanction regime targeting people smuggling gangs in another attempt to stem the flow of migrants and small boats crossing the channel from France. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Sakina Kamwendo on SAFM.
Well, thanks, Andela. All right, let's get back to analysis on the story about what's happening in Parliament. And Parliament, of course, sitting this morning. And with regard to the Mkhwanazi matter, the portfolio committees on police and justice and constitutional development, they met to consider a draft report on the request to consider allegations that were made by the KZN Police Commissioner, and also looking at appropriate approach to submit recommendations to the National Assembly. So they have since accepted or adopted the report, as we heard from our reporter Zaleen Merrington. But we are joined now by Advocate Zweletu Madasa for some analysis on this matter. Advocate Madasa, I hope we have a better line now.
Yeah, no, I think we do. Yes, thank you.
Thanks so much. So I was asking you about your observation regarding how the saga has been handled by Parliament and by the presidency.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I was saying that the preamble to this matter, to understand it fully why there's public outcry about commissions of inquiry, is because the major commission of inquiry that we know as South Africans, ordinary people, us voters, citizens who are not in government, is the Zondo Commission, which Mr. President was the champion of as a deputy president and as a president. So through starting that commission, it gave us a huge hope that corruption in the state was going to be dealt with. And he actually promised that. And that's why ANC was voted again, albeit with a smaller majority, but it was voted under his presidency because of this hope that he was going to deal with corruption by actually dealing with the Zondo Commission effectively. But since then, there's been no effective dealing with the Zondo Commission in terms of further investigations, recommendations, and substantial arrest of people who are prime suspects. So I think that's where this problem of lack of confidence in the president about starting commissions of inquiry comes from. So I think that's the background to this problem. Now, coming to this, how he has dealt with the current situation, allegations arising from Mr. Mkhwana's. I think building from the case I've made about lack of confidence in President Ramaphosa's dealing with commissions of inquiry, people now are saying, no, not another one. I think that's the feeling of South Africans, that not another one. Why? Because there's a difference between doing an investigation, which we're all supportive of. But that is different from accountability. What we have seen under the presidency of Mr. Ramaphosa is that investigations are done, which he initiates, but there is no accountability. They are not accompanied by accountability. That is the issue. So now, for him to initiate this commission of inquiry, where we have a history of no accountability, we're no longer prepared to accept that. That is where the problem is.
So we heard from Parliament there that Parliament feels that they need to have their own investigation into this particular matter, quite separate from that of the executive.
That I support fully, Madam. I support that fully, because that has been part of my personal concern about governance in South Africa, that we have this very powerful institution, which is another arm of the state called Parliament, with specific constitutional powers to hold the executive accountable and to do its own investigation as a process of holding the executive accountable. And there's not been sufficient matters of investigations as a way of accountability done in the past. When I heard in this particular case that the Parliament has, the Speaker, as the manager of the Parliament, has taken an initiative through the cluster committees of justice and security to actually do this investigation, that I welcome, and it should be welcomed fully by the people. Because those are the people who have been directly elected by the people to represent their voice in governance.
And then specifically looking at the appointment of the incoming police minister, although it may be in an acting capacity, Professor Firoz Kachalia. Now, can you effectively have two ministers occupy the same position? Because if Minister Mkhunu is on special leave, he's still the minister. And now you have Professor Kachalia coming in as acting minister. Just explain to us, whether that is sound and whether that is something that will, withstand scrutiny in the Constitutional Court, as the EFF have threatened to take it there.
Look, I'll make a general point and come to the technicalities. I think the general point is that precisely the president, the way he manages issues that have to do with politicians is always ambiguous and vague and indirect, dithering. This style of leadership is really, really concerning. And that is what is making the public not be confident in him. Because we have a situation where the budget is already very small, the tax base is very small. So people are complaining about bloated government. You don't want a situation where your actions create more expenditure, because by having two ministers in the same portfolio, that's more expenditure. So that is problematic. Now, coming to the technicalities. One, the president is allowed by Section 91, 3C, to select not more than two ministers from outside the assembly. Because as you know, all the other ministers come, including himself, come from the assembly, they are members of parliament. So he's allowed to select two people to be cabinet members, maximum two, outside the assembly. So he can bring Kachalia, in my view, and I think that's constitutional. The constitution is not explicit whether it should be a full-time position or part-time. It just says he may select two ministers outside the assembly. So Kachalia is coming in. Personally, I have no problem, in my opinion. I think that is appropriate. Now, coming to the other minister, look, the president has powers to fire and hire and is not required to give reasons. That is why I am critical, and many others, why he's not fired Mchunu. He does not have to give Mchunu reasons. Given a history of corruption and non-action, he should have just fired Mchunu. That's it. On the prima facie evidence of Mkwanazi. That was enough. Now, he has decided to suspend him. It's a legitimate way to deal with a person, a minister, to suspend, because he's saying he's looking for cogent reasons. He doesn't want to fire him arbitrarily. That's fine, but under the current environment of political inaction, that is inadvisable, the route he has taken. But I don't think it's illegal, because he's got the right, before he fires, to actually investigate, be satisfied with the reasons, and fire.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much. That was Advocate Zweletu Madasa, legal analyst, speaking to us about the latest developments around what's happening after the Mkwanazi revelations.
A humongous rivalry in African women's football is back on the battlefield. The Super Falcons are highly confident they will keep their hopes of the 10th title alive. However, Banyana have a mammoth task to silence the green and white. This is the semi-final contest of the Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024. 9-time African champions Nigeria versus reigning champions South Africa this Tuesday 22 July at 5:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus, SABC3 and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC radio stations at 6 p.m. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM Sport with John Gerika.
Well, welcome back.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And thanks. I must tell you, John always brings me a little something when he comes back.
Something.
Thank you.
Enjoying it. Was it good?
Very.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thought that counts. I'm back for the WAFCON, as you heard in the ad break there. Semi-finals, Nigeria against South Africa, starts at 6 o'clock today. The sides are locked at 4-4 in the head-to-head since 2010. Here's Banyana midfielder Gabriela Salgado.
Yeah, as we know, Nigeria is not going to be an easy team to face, but neither will we. We know the rivalry, and we know the responsibility that we carry as a team. So we're just going to go out there, give our very best, make the best team win. We're not going down without a fight, though.
The other semi-final, Morocco against Ghana, that starts at 9 o'clock tonight. In women's Euro semi-finals today, it's England against Italy, also starting at 9. Tour de France today, stage 16, 133 kilometres of beautiful flat Provence roads, leading to just one mountain, the windswept moonscape of Mont Ventoux. Said it incorrectly. 15.7 kilometers at 8.8% in any language. That's very, very steep. It might be a week away from Paris still, but the winner will be crowned today. Today, Pogacar is in front, 4 minutes and 13 seconds ahead of Vingegaard. So he needs to beat Pogacar by those 4 minutes today up the mountains. Highly unlikely. Florian Lipovets A young rider from Germany, 7 minutes 53, is currently holding on to the bronze medal. Lions tour on the go. The First Nations and Pacifica 15 up against the British and Irish Lions. The Lions leading 14-7 early stages there. Owen Farrell is captaining the Lions in Melbourne for the first start of the tour. He's at inside centre along with Jamie Osborne. It's a starting team that doesn't include any of the players who played in the first test against Australia at the weekend. Meanwhile, for the Springboks, 25 days till they meet Australia. It's going to be at Ellis Park for the start of the Rugby Championship. Bok mentor Rassie Rasmus is ready to get serious.
But these small matches we always saw as listen, we're going to experiment a little bit. So eventually getting the score lines that you did, we're fairly satisfied with. But as you rightly said, the Rugby Championship is definitely a step up to Tier 2 nations, the Barbarian game and the Italy matches. So, we'll be going full on to try and win those first 2 Australian matches with a 36-man squad, which will announce on Tuesday.
Did a quick search for tickets. Sorry, do you want to say something?
Are they still the mighty Aussies?
No.
No, that's what I'm thinking.
No.
You know, we at this point, we're going through the motions with them.
Through the motions with Australia. New Zealand a little bit, but it's,
New Zealand, not Australia
not
at this
Australia.
point.
Shame, mate.
Where are they? Number 8?
Yeah, they're way
Somewhere
down the bottom.
there.
Yeah, and the Lions beat them as well.
Yeah.
It's still fans' favourites. I did a quick search for tickets today. Ellis Park, 16th of August. They did start at 525 Rand. If you want to sit by yourself, in other words, you don't want to sit with any friends, you can find a ticket for 525 Rand. And at the moment, if you want to sit with a friend, you need to pay 1,750 Rand for a seat, and that's behind the posts. There are more expensive ones if you have the money. There's cricket on the go. The 5th match between South Africa and New Zealand in that triangular series starts at 1 o'clock today. New Zealand won last week, but all-rounder Corbin Bosch thinks the Proteas will work hard for a win this evening.
Something that we pride ourselves to try to be ruthless at all stages of the game, and I think we put our foot off the pedal a little bit in the game, especially in the field. I think we were a little bit lackadaisy towards the back end of that game and just let through some easy runs and maybe a costly drop chance that may have swung the game even more in our favour, where we could have been a bit more ruthless. But I think we have addressed it. I think in the last game, like bat and ball, we were pretty ruthless. So I think we must just do more of the same.
Other T20 today, Bangladesh against Pakistan, the second T20 in Mirpur. Bangladesh won the first of the 3-match series, and the West Indies take on Australia tomorrow morning at 2 a.m. in Kingston. Some tennis news for you. 7-time Grand Slam winner Venus Williams celebrated victory in the last 16 of the women's doubles at the Washington Open after 16 months away from tennis. 45-year-old, she's 45, former world number 1, accepted a wild card for the tournament, hasn't competed since the Miami Open in March of last year. Williams and fellow American Hailey Baptiste beat Eugenie Bouchard and Clervie Nunguria 6-3, 6-1. Williams feels that her appearance is more than just the game.
Tennis is about excellence, and I'm very pro women and women in sports, so that's so important too. But today, we got to see 3 African Americans on the court, and so it's amazing that now African American girls know they can play tennis, that is an option, that's an opportunity for them to be out on the court in whichever capacity, whether you get to the pros, whether you play college, or whether you just learn from the sport. So just from both of those angles, women in sports, all women in sports of all colors.
It's rare that I do politics, but just quickly, U.S. President Donald Trump's threatening to block a proposed stadium deal for the Washington Commanders unless the team reverts back to its original name, the Redskins. In a post on Truth Social, Trump says there's a big clamoring, quote-unquote, to ditch the Commanders' name, calling it ridiculous and claiming changing back would boost the team's value. The Commanders dropped the Redskins' name in 2020 due to its racist connotations. This is a $175 billion deal currently in place to build the new 65,000 stadium at the old RFK site.
But what's it to the president?
Well, this is that whole